Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku become Master of Illusion Part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story Apprentice of Mysterio from 𝐴3. So let's start the video. Noting the paper mache bomb in the center of the room, Mina tried to strike up a conversation with the Bomberanian. So, my quirk lets me create acid of different intensities from my body, from super strong to almost non-corrosive. I can spray it from almost anywhere. And do you think Deku has a quirk? 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 interrupted, giving no indication he had even heard the girl. Or was it an illusion? Mina blinked. All Might said that this was the time to be working on the strategy, not gossiping. Well, yeah, you saw the ball throw. I don't think his drones were strong enough to launch it that far, so it can't have been an illusion. Mina said. Why's it matter? He got into the hero course, so he's worthy of being here either way, right? 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 didn't say anything. He just clenched his fist tighter. What an edgelord, Mina quietly thought, before deciding to try and get him back on track. So, you got a plan. 𝐬𝐻 strategy isn't really my best. Here's the plan. Raccoon eyes, you stay here and guard the bomb. I'll go down and take out that gashapon-faced Deku. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 stormed towards the stairs, ignoring his partner's protests. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲, wait, what about his partner? 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 was gone before she had finished talking. While Mina had been expecting their partner to be abrasive, she didn't expect him to just ignore the partnership altogether. Sighing, Mina looked around the cluttered room. She might as well try to do something to prepare. So who do you think is going to win? Kaminari asked Gyro. Realizing the electric boy was talking to him, Gyro sighed resignedly. I think 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 holds a clear advantage. But Mina's acid is good for setting traps and being used offensively, Gyro said after a moment of thought. That being said, illusionists can be tricky to deal with, so assuming he's smart about it, Midoriya could get to the right spot and use his quirk to take out 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲. I don't think Midoriya will have as big of an advantage as you think. Everyone turned towards the Yaoyorozu heiress. Why do you think that, Kiro? Isui asked, tilting her head at the girl. The original Mysterio did pull off some amazing illusions, I'll give him that. But that took weeks, sometimes months of preparation work, Momo explained. In addition, illusionists are usually defensive, non-confrontational by virtue of how their powers, or technology in this case, are immaterial by nature. Their powers make them best suited for ambushes, setting traps, and hiding things which, if Midoriya was playing a villain, would be an advantage. But in this scenario, with Midoriya and Uraraka having to search for the bomb, Midoriya will be at a disadvantage since he didn't appear to bring any robots or drones with him. Plus, 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 is likely to just ignore whatever illusions Midoriya can create and head straight for him. You all saw how he was during the quirk apprehension test, so I doubt he'd let something immaterial get in his way. The class nodded, following along with her reasoning. Also, and this is just from what I know of her, Ochako doesn't seem to carry any weapons or other offensive items on. Momo admitted, and since her quirk requires touch while 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 and Ashido's quirks have range, she wouldn't have much of an advantage, even if she negated their gravity, since they could still hit her from a distance. Now, do not underestimate your classmates, Yaoyorozu-san. All Might spoke up. Just because a quirk or support item doesn't seem useful to you doesn't mean there isn't a way for someone to use it to their advantage. Of course, All Might sensei. Momo bowed her head in forgiveness, though All Might waved her off. Teams, your prep time is up. Let the match begin. All Might cried into the mic. And best of luck, young Midoriya. You may be my successor, but for this test I must remain impartial. Show them why you can redeem the legacy you've chosen to adopt, and how you'll be an amazing hero. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 ran down the halls, bearing a grin akin to a starving dog smelling a juicy steak. At long last, he was going to do it. He was going to find that shitty Deku, plow through his useless illusions, and kick his ass so hard that he would have no choice but to leave. Yeah, he may have had some kind of super strength quirk, but he knew it was fake or some kind of mutation. Most likely it was just another illusion he made. And if it wasn't, he'd beat the truth out of him. But no matter what, he'd win. Hell yeah. His younger self cheered, before quickly falling silent. He turned the corner, and there he was. That gashapon-headed Deku with that rosy-cheeked girl. He wasn't concerned with her. He was certain that even that invisible girl could handle her. 𝐷𝐴 𝐻𝐿 leaped at the suit, grabbing hold of it by the chain joining the eyeclasps. You didn't even make a stupid illusion. Oh, the illusions are just starting, catch on. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 was startled. Not because Deku's voice came out of the suit through some kind of hidden speaker. That much he expected. It was because the boy's voice no longer sounded scared or shy, but instead focused and confident. Before 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐲 could reply, a thick, vaguely familiar green fog started pouring from the suit, and the environment around him started to morph. The smoke seemed to reform the walls, the floor, the roof, that rosy-cheeked girl, even the light itself. It took only a few seconds, but it looked as though everything around 𝐻𝐸 had been altered. Instead of the plain, empty hallways of the test building, he was in some kind of ancient stone temple. All around him, primitive torches ignited from above. The sun shone through a distant hole in the roof, and the air became thick with humidity and an ancient, moist smell. Frap, he could actually smell the temple? What the actual shit? 𝐻𝐸 was so shocked that he dropped Deku, who hit the ground and shattered into a swarm of green-furred, purple-winged bats that flew up at his rival. 𝐻𝐸 instinctively threw up his arms, ready to blast the sky rats away should they try to bite him. But he felt nothing. No pain, no fuzzy fur. Not even their bodies when they flew into him. Of course, holograms. They were fake, just like the temple around him. Angry, he fell for something he knew had been coming. 𝐻𝐸 turned around and shouted to the air. "I know this isn't real, Deku." 𝐻𝐸 shouted out. "Stop hiding like a coward and face me." Click. A quiet click drew his attention to the stone tiles on the floor, and with a groan a massive boulder on a rope swung down from the ceiling towards 𝐻𝐸, who upon noticing it just scoffed. "Another illusion. I want you to actually hit." 𝐻𝐸 couldn't finish his sentence because the moment the boulder made an impact, something large, too large to be Midoriya's fists, impacted him and sent him flying into the wall. 𝐻𝐸 hit the ground, rolling for a bit before standing. It wasn't a boulder. He knew that from the lack of surface texture, but something had hit him. Impossible. Nothing is impossible at the hands of Mysterio. Deku called out, everywhere yet nowhere at once. As he spoke, music started playing, Master of Puppets by that ancient American band, if 𝐻𝐸 remembered right. An ugly scowl broke out on his face at the implication. Was that weak-ass Gashapin seriously calling him his puppet? I don't need to fake everything. With my skills and support gear, I can make the material unreal and the dream a reality. But which is which? Unless you have a spider sense, I very much doubt you'll figure it out. That voice, line with a snarl, drew 𝐻𝐸's attention to a jaguar, green with purple markings and eyes the same silvery blue as that stupid dome. It ran towards 𝐻𝐸 on all fours, but the boy stood his ground. That's obviously another fake. There's no way you'd attack me with an actual. The rest of 𝐻𝐸's words died out when the jaguar morphed into Midoriya, dressed as an Aztec warrior in the jaguar's skin. 𝐻𝐸's shock was replaced with fury and he immediately lunged forward, but the warrior grabbed his right arm and flipped him onto the ground. By the time 𝐻𝐸 recovered, the fake Midoriya had vanished into the green smoke that seemed to appear from nowhere. You don't know anything about me anymore, Kakin, but I know everything about you because I've spent years studying you. His voice called out from the ground beside 𝐻𝐸. A green and purple viper with Midoriya's eyes lunged at 𝐻𝐸, but he rolled away and scrambled to his feet as the viper spoke, Midoriya's words on the reptile's tongue. I cataloged it all in that notebook you destroyed, because in spite of everything you've done, I've always thought you were amazing. But now I can stand alongside you, and I can beat you. With a snarl, 𝐻𝐸 smashed the talking viper with his boot, the snake, of course, exploding into green smoke that dissipated. There was a crunching sound this time, but it did little to cool 𝐻𝐸's rage. Turning away, 𝐻𝐸 ran down the hallway, leaping over a pit with his explosions, choosing not to gamble on if it was real or not, all the while trying to find where that cowardly fake villain went. Because no one humiliated the future #1 hero, especially not a shitty, Gashapon-faced little Deku. And would that fucking song just stop already? The control room was stunned. Midoriya, with barely any time to prepare that they could see, made an entire jungle temple appear indoors, complete with traps, animals, and costumes. I thought you said he wasn't able to do this. Minta yelped, that he needed prep time or something. For her part, Momo looked just as confused. I thought he couldn't. The time needed to set up something that complex was far too long. So how holograms? Everyone turned to the speaker in surprise. After all, this was the first time Shoto Todoroki had spoken up since school began. With everyone's attention on him, Todoroki continued to explain. Midoriya must have brought some hidden drones with him, probably with pre-installed programs, and released them to create that illusion. Mysterio was well known for more than just special effects. He created incredibly realistic holograms that have been said to fool even those with enhanced senses such as the Wolverine or original Daredevil. Everyone stared at the boy in surprise at his knowledge of an American villain from the past, before turning back to the screen when Kirishima asked, "Hey, what's going on with Ishido?" Mina was finished. She looked around the room tiredly, but proudly, even though she had been unable to move some of the boxes and furniture out. She was positive that coating the stuff in acid would be enough of a deterrent to keep anyone from approaching the bomb, which had a thick layer of acid to protect it. The acid wouldn't cause any permanent damage, of course. Mina may have been a ditz on occasion, but she was well aware of how dangerous her quirk could be, so she made sure to study everything she could about chemistry to get her control over the substance to be as perfect as she could. Also, it sounded like Midoriya was having fun downstairs, if that music blaring was any indication. She didn't recognize it, but it had a nice beat, even if it wasn't something she could dance to. So now that the prep work was done, she felt she too could relax and have a bit of fun. After all, All Might Sensei told them to embody villainy, right? And wahahaha. Now let's see those nasty little do-gooders try and obtain the bomb now. Once Sparky Boom Man returns with Greeny's head, we will rule the world, she proclaimed in her best evil villain voice. SNNRT. Mina spun around. That was definitely a snort of laughter coming from the window. I know you're there, hero. Show yourself or face the might of the alien queen. After a few seconds, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 leaped in, weightless, diving straight for the bomb like an action hero. But Mina was closer and swifter, skating on a trail of acid secreted from her feet. The horned girl snatched up the bomb and took it to the other side of the room. Setting it down, Mina turned to the space girl, smirking triumphantly. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 glared at the pink girl, cheeks puffed out in anger. Dang it. She settled down on the wall, but never took her eyes away from Mina, despite the angle. You'll have to try better than that, Mina taunted, keeping up her villainous act. After all, why does Midoriya get to be the only fake villain here? 𝐻𝐚𝐭 reached for a chair weaponized, but stopped short when she realized what was coating it. Acid. That's right. This whole room is covered in painful acid. Your quirk relies on touch, right? That's why you were putting your hands on your clothes yesterday, Mina explained proudly. Face it, hero, you're in trouble. Ooh, she's in quite the bind now, isn't she? All Might asked the class as if he were a wrestling commentator. How can she secure the bomb if she can't even touch it? Before anyone could offer up a suggestion, a cry of pain drew everyone's attention back to the screen where 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was now, fighting a horde of clowns. This is fucking ridiculous. One minute he was dodging poison darts in a hallway. The next he dived out of a jungle-themed funhouse and into some kind of carnival with killer clowns, with toy laser pistols that actually hurt, and Deku's face. And now it was night. What the actual fuck? And that fucking song was still going. 10 minutes left. All Might spoke in the earpiece. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was sorely tempted to smash the earpiece, but knew better and chose to focus his rage on that cheap evasive bastard. Be fucking consistent, you little AGH. Fuck. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻, in his anger, turned to punch a clown, only to impact the wall of the building he was still inside of. He held his aching hand, gritting his teeth. This wasn't working. Deku wasn't coming out, but he was somehow attacking him from within the illusions, but 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 couldn't see him, especially with all that fog covering the ground. Wait. That's it. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 turned to the carnival, and, glancing at his gauntlet storage levels, smiled viciously, which only widened when he noticed an unseen figure moving through said fog. You think you can hide from me forever, you damn Deku? Well, guess what? You can't. 'Cause you may know how I fight and how my quirk works, but that's only because I had a limited amount of sweat at any time. With a sneer, the explosive teen pulled back on the arm of his grenade gauntlet, a firing pin popping out. The figure moving in the smog stopped. But what happens if I had a lot of it? Huh? Can your shitty notebooks tell you that? Yes. The figure was frozen in fear. It didn't matter if he could see Deku's stupid face or not. The blast was sure to be large enough to hit him, or at least stun him. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻, stop. If you fire that directly at him, you'll kill him, All Might commanded. But 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was too focused to care. He'll be fine thanks to that costume's armor, 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 snarled, though at the last moment he did tilt his arm away from Deku almost impulsively. Tink. The sound that followed the deceptively silent noise was massive. A huge boom, like a cannon shot out of the gauntlet, a fiery trail of destruction chasing after it and smashing through everything in its path without mercy. All the fog was pushed out the way. Several invisible objects exploded into sparks, and the holograms flickered and fizzled before vanishing, the building now back to normal. Upstairs, the two girls stumbled as the building shook. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 ran ahead to try and grab the bomb, but a handful of acid in her path blocked her in time for Mina to get back in between her and the bomb. Putting her hand to an ear to her ear, as if receiving instructions, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 decided now was the time to be aggressive and ran at Mina. The students in the control room recovered quickly, but they were all shouting, some in anger over 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻's actions, a few defending it, while others focused on his target, currently obscured by the explosion's black smoke. Sensei, you've got to stop the fight, Momo protested. Midoriya could be severely hurt. All Might grunted in agreement and reached for the microphone, but was swiftly interrupted when a voice spoke up. It's okay, All Might. I'm fine. I figured he'd use those gauntlets at some point, so I baited him into wasting his shot. Though I admit the blast was larger than I expected. All Might sagged in relief. Midoriya was all right. He didn't even sound hurt, just out of breath. I'm glad to hear you're unharmed, young Midoriya, but I'm still stopping the test. 𝐻𝐴 could have killed you, All Might insisted. The other students, hearing Midoriya was alive, relaxed slightly. But he didn't, and villains never hold back, so why should he? Sensei, please, let me finish this. Midoriya protested. I need to prove to everyone that I can do this, even if I don't use my quirk. All Might bit his lip. Deep down, he knew that as the class teacher, he needed to call off the test. 𝐻𝐴 had used a move so dangerous it could have killed someone, and didn't even care that the teacher said no. By all accounts, he should be kicked out, or suspended at the very least. ... But then All Might remembered earlier that day how so many in the class gave him looks of distrust and suspicion, how some looked incredulous that he would even think of using a powerless villain's identity, that he could use it to be a hero. Midoriya had spent his whole life being underestimated and ridiculed for one reason or another, and even after making it to the high school of his dreams, he still felt like he barely belonged. He needed to win this, his way. With a deep sigh, knowing Aizawa, Nezu, 𝐵𝗵𝐸, and Recovery Girl were probably going to put him through the ringer for his next words, spoke into the microphone. Very well, against my better judgment, I'll allow this fight to continue. But if 𝐻𝐴 uses that move again, I'm suspending the match and both sides will lose. Is that clear? Midoriya gave his confirmation, while 𝐻𝐴 just grunted in annoyance. Good. And you have 5 minutes remaining. All Might finished. Hey, the smoke's clearing up, Toru said, pointing to the screen. 𝐻𝐴 huffed, smirking. That blast destroyed the stupid carnival illusion, silenced that fucking music, and took out a whole wall. He knew his gauntlets were kick-ass, but he didn't realize just how awesome the guys at Wondrous Might and Heroism had made them. He was momentarily worried that Deku couldn't have dodged, but then he saw movement in the explosion's smoke and knew he had survived. The shitty pebble never knew when to lie down and give up. 𝐻𝐴 reset the triggering mechanism and walked closer. With the smoke clearing, he saw that he had been half right. Deku was indeed alright, but it looked like he wasn't able to get completely out of the way. Instead, he was half buried under some rubble from the wall, his legs and right arm pinned. Annoyingly, that stupid bubble helmet didn't even have a scratch on it, though the green suit had torn open to reveal some kind of rough gray armor underneath the scale-like material. Are we really lucky that D didn't hurt me? Midoriya stuttered out, his suit's radio crackling with static. Good. That meant he was shaken, so he just needed to finish the fight, then he'd finally accept how utterly worthless he was. He tried to dig himself free with his left arm, probably to escape to the nearby stairwell, but 𝐻𝐴 pinned the limb down with his boot. Faye, I knew you wouldn't have died. You're too stubborn. 𝐻𝐴 leaned down, glaring into his reflection in the stupid fishbowl. But now you're out of tricks, and I've got another to take down. He raised his gauntlet to the helmet, small explosions crackling from his excitement. 𝐻𝐴, if you fired that large blast again. All Might warned him from the control room, as if he hadn't heard the #1 hero the first time. 𝐻𝐴 gritted his teeth. Hearing the disapproval in All Might's tone pissed him off, but looking back, he did realize that perhaps firing such a massive attack in a small area had been overkill for the training exercise. We could have killed him if we had directly hit him, the younger voice said, only to shut up again. Calm down, Teach. I'm not gonna use the full tank blast at this range. I'm not an idiot. 𝐻𝐴 assured All Might, for lack of a better word, before turning back to his former friend. I want you to see us as we should be. Me standing tall, and you shaking beneath my boots. You're WR wrong. Midoriya stuttered out, still struggling to free the arm pinned by the rubble. What you say, you damn nerd? 𝐻𝐴 snarled, grabbing the suit by the tacky cape clasps, determined not to let him slip out again no matter what shitty trick he pulled this time. I'm greater than you. I beat you. Your best magic tricks weren't enough to stop me, and you've got nothing left. Well, I do have one last. Midoriya stuttered out coyly. Before the suit depressurized, the costume fell limp in 𝐻𝐴's grip, and the helmet went clear to show that the suit was empty and the nerd was gone. But still, Midoriya's voice came from the suit, transmitted over the damaged radio. TT trick. 𝐻𝐴 jumped back, but before he could turn around a muffled gunshot was heard, and he was suddenly pinned to the wall. He struggled and his hands popped with explosions, but he was unable to free himself from the web. What the shit? 𝐻𝐴 shouted, struggling. Oh, that's my web net gun, modeled after the original design Mysterio used when he was starting out. 𝐻𝐴 stopped struggling, eyes widening in disbelief as the air shimmered, and Midoriya was revealed. Only he wasn't wearing that gaudy green outfit with the cape. No, what he was wearing was a dark green jumpsuit, tightly hugging his frame, covered in dark gray eyes, a black belt and gun holster secured to his waist with that eye design Mysterio was so fond of adorning the buckle. That same eye was found on Midoriya's new collar, from which a hologram of 𝐻𝐴's own face glared at him intently before shutting off to reveal the real Midoriya. wearing a stylized visor as well as a headset with a microphone, his face matching the hologram's expression. On the back of his wrists, attached to the sleeves, were 2 touch screens showing the suit's data and camera feeds from his drones, such as the 4 small ones, shaped like the domed suit's eyeglasses, hovering above him. Midoriya lowered his arm, tightly clenching what resembled a dark green flare gun, with the same Mysterio eyes inlaid on the barrel in red, before replacing it in the holster. I told you, 𝗵𝘃𝐸. I'm not trailing behind you anymore. Now I'm on equal footing. Now I can beat you. Midoriya quickly retrieved the original suit and, without another look back, ran upstairs, leaving his classmate stuck to the wall, screaming in rage. This 𝐷𝐸 count, you damn nerd. You didn't even use her worthless fucking power. 𝗵𝘃𝐸 yelled at him, struggling to free himself from the webs pinning him to the wall. Those words made Deku pause for a moment, but he didn't look back, even when he responded. I know. With that he left, 𝗵𝘃𝐸 seething and silenced. Reaching up to his headset, Midoriya gave his partner a message, trying his hardest to keep his words level. 𝐴𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿, it's time. End this. Inside the control room, everyone was going nuts at the reveal. He has a second costume. Monda, how devious. Sensei, is that even allowed? All Might kept his laugh to himself. While he didn't doubt his successor's capabilities, he was worried about how the suit would fare against 𝗵𝘃𝐸, especially since Midoriya still needed to get a grip on One for All. But it looked as though Midoriya had everything well in hand. Why wouldn't it be allowed? Plenty of heroes have secondary costumes for different purposes. All Might explained. I myself have a rescue costume designed by David Shield, from back when I studied abroad in America. That's right. The trend was made popular by Tony Stark, the pre-quirk hero Iron Man. Ada proclaimed with a repeated chop punctuating his words. All Might smirked, then returned to his microphone. 2 minutes, teams. Back with Mina and 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿. The former continued skating around, moving the bomb while dodging 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿's attacks. She had eventually gotten frustrated enough to grab a hold of one of the larger boxes despite the acid and throw it like a baseball. But Mina swiftly dodged it, sticking her tongue out at the other space-themed girl. Might as well give up, hero. You can't reach this bomb in time. Mina taunted. She hoped 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 would buy her words, since her palms were starting to burn. 1 minute remaining. All Might warned, heroes never give up. 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 put a finger to her earpiece, smirking. And who said I was trying to catch you? 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 asked with a smirk. Before Mina could express her confusion, 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 reached over and grabbed one of the larger crates in the room, ignoring the acid despite seeing and hearing it sizzle, and, activating her quirk to render it weightless, threw it at the other girl. Mina panicked, but she had run herself into the corner so she couldn't dodge. Acting quickly, Mina painfully summoned and threw a handful of acid at the crate, hoping to at least weaken it. But the globs went right through the crate and the smirking 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 fading into pixels. Realizing it was a distraction, Mina tried to find where 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 was, but it was too late. The enemy weapon has been captured. The heroes win. All Might announced over the building loudspeakers. Mina was understandably confused. What? But 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 is. She looked at the bomb behind her, and the now visible 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 hugging the top of the bomb. Hovering in the air, secured by a massive drone secured to her like a jetpack by some metal tentacles with claws. Surrounding her were several smaller drones, no thicker than a few yen coins stacked atop each other, no wider than the top of a soda can, and all of them adorned with Mysterio's eye. And, release, 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 muttered, deactivating the quirk on herself, the drone lowering her to the ground, where she promptly vomited rainbows. Oh, let me help you. Mina ran over and held back 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿's hair, patting her classmate comfortingly. You were amazing. Never had to use that quirk so long on myself. 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 whimpered out. Mina patted her back comfortingly. Would young Midoriya please free 𝗵𝘃𝐸 from his net? And will both teams please report to the control room for the post-match analysis? The girls left the room, the drones following them. On the way out they saw 𝗵𝘃𝐸 storm off, covered in something thick, sticky and white resembling dried silly string. Mina would have made a joke about that, but she valued her life. Thank you very much. You did great, Uraraka. The girls glanced up to see Midoriya, his original suit under one arm and his helmet in the other as he came over. Flanking him was a swarm of mini drones, identical to the ones that accompanied 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿. A couple were carrying broken mini drones and dice-like plastic cubes, gripping them with claw-like legs made of thin metal. Bringing up the rear was a drone that looked identical to the one 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 had following her. What the heck are you wearing, Mysteria? Mina asked, enjoying how 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐿 was trying not to blush at the form-fitting outfit their classmate wore. I'll tell you with the rest of the class, Midoriya said, unfolding his original suit and pulling aside the cape to reveal a hidden metal and plastic backpack with charging ports and holders sculpted upon it. code phrase, and that's a wrap, people. The drones immediately convened on the back of the suit, pouring into their designated spots with robotic efficiency. The only exceptions were the broken drones, which Midoriya deposited into the pack itself along with some broken holocubes. A glance inside let Mina see that it mainly held medical supplies, a diver's tank of oxygen, and chemical containers hooked up to thick plastic tubes that fed into the suit. "You're ready for anything, huh?" she mused to the boy, who just shrugged. "Prep work is a vital part of my persona," he said simply. And with that they went to the control room, where the team, or rather Midoriya, was immediately bombarded with questions, mainly about just how he did everything. Seeing All Might gave him permission to explain. Likely because he was curious himself, Midoriya cleared his throat. "Well, you're Uraraka and I knew that Bakugo was most likely going to come after me, so I had to keep him distracted," Midoriya began. "I had my mini-drones spread throughout the building, spreading a few holocubes around to create the environment I needed, which, combined with my suggestibility gas, made the environment ultra-realistic," Midoriya continued. "The mini-drones then followed Bakugo around, playing loud music, and releasing the appropriate smells and noises to distract and disorient him. Meanwhile, I sneaked around him, commanding my cloaked combat drone to provide the physical element of the illusions, like the air pulse cannon to simulate the boulder on a rope, or using the mini-drones to shoot air that simulated darts. Of course, when Bakugo blasted my suit, I knew it was time to stop messing with him, so I took him out. In the corner, Bakugo, finally clean of any remaining web strands thanks to Kirishima's help, scowled. At the same time, Uraraka used my second, cloaked combat drone to carry her to the top floor so she could sneak in and steal the weapon. But since she got caught, I needed a few minutes to come up with a new plan, so I had her stall until we came up with driving her to a corner," Midoriya finished, before stuttering and proclaiming, "Oh, of course, I'm not saying you were at fault for anything, Ochako. It was an honest mistake that anyone could have made." Ochako tilted her head in surprise. It seemed that all the confidence in him had been left behind when the trial ended. "Strange, but you didn't face him in a real fight at all," Kirishima complained. "Not a very manly method. If being manly means getting a face full of explosions or breaking my limbs to win a class competition, then I'm perfectly happy to disappoint you," Midoriya countered, a slightly angry edge to his words that everyone was taken aback by, Midoriya himself included. "Sorry bro, didn't mean to upset you," Kirishima apologized, clearly feeling guilty over criticizing a teammate's preferred methods and quirk. "No, I get it," Midoriya said, forcing a smile on his face. "I just wanted to win on my terms." "Wait, you were playing music?" Gyro asked, partially to dispel the tension in the air. "May I ask what?" "Master of Puppets by Metallica," Midoriya explained, latching onto the subject change. "My trainer was into retro American, and I needed something that would keep Bakugo angry and focused on me, and it seemed like my best bet to provoke him." Gyro nodded. "Good pick. We should trade music sometime." "Count me in," Kaminari cheered. Midoriya immediately started stuttering in shock while Ochako felt annoyed. "That's weird. Why did she? So what exactly do you have on right now, since you did not seem to be wearing it earlier today?" Ida exclaimed, determined to get the conversation back on track. "Actually, I was wearing this outfit, just underneath my blockbuster suit," Midoriya quickly explained. Seeing their confused looks, he explained, "My dome-headed suit is called the blockbuster because it's big, has a noticeable design, and has the majority of my flashier tech in it. It's meant to grab your attention, like a summer blockbuster, and it has internal motors so it can move around on its own. But this suit that I'm wearing right now is in many ways my real hero costume," Midoriya continued. "It's called the Sleeper Head. I designed it so that I could give myself some prep time while my blockbuster suit had everyone's attention, or disguise myself if I had to do some underground hero work." "Wait, how does this suit disguise you?" "It's still pretty eye-catching," Mina asked. Instead of answering, Midoriya just typed a few commands into his right glove, and in a flash of light another Mina appeared before her, striking a pose with a peace sign. "Check it out, I can become anyone I want," Mina said in a perfect copy of the original's voice. The other students gaped at the disguise, virtually indistinguishable from the real article, whose eyes were wide in amazement. "We're like twins." She reached over to feel her doppelganger's horns, but found her fingers pass through it, a few pixels briefly displaced around where she tried to touch them. "It's still just an illusion. I can't imitate quirks or extra body parts without some other items that I need to craft beforehand," Mina explained as the disguise was shut off. "Also, I have to know how someone looks, acts, and sounds before I can do a proper imitation. That's a shame. If you could solve that problem, you could totally fulfill any guy's phantasm." To began before Gyro's earjack jabbed him in the neck. "Oh, finish that sentence and it's your eye next," she calmly threatened. Settle down, All Might commanded, continuing to speak over the class groans and complaints. "We need to get to the analysis of the fight." Who can tell me who the MVP of this match was? It was Ashido-chan, All Might Sensei. Momo explained to everyone's surprise. What? But the heroes won. Zero protested. Indeed they did. And yet Yaoyorozu is correct. Can you explain why? All Might asked the would-be heroine. Well, Bakugo didn't even attempt to make a strategy with his partner, choosing instead to focus on a personal grudge against Midoriya, even using a dangerous move despite your instruction. Momo began. Bakugo said nothing, but instead of glaring or snapping at her, he just looked down in frustration. Midoriya made a good plan to occupy Bakugo and prove the versatility of his equipment. Midoriya smiled at this, but, as he admitted, he didn't take this seriously, choosing instead to string Bakugo along with weak attacks until he used his gauntlet's hidden triggers. Had this been a real fight, he could have gotten bystanders in danger, or worse yet set off the nuclear device. Also, he refused to use his quirk to take down Bakugo, though I understand that he didn't want to break his arm or fingers again. Momo elaborated, making Izuku's smile fade. I didn't consider that. Midoriya mumbled in shame. Ochako patted his arm comfortingly, but she definitely did not blush when she felt his muscles. Nope, Uraraka came close to being the MVP since she caught the weapon and didn't let the acid slow her down, but her giggling kept her from sneaking up on Ashido. Momo continued. Ashido, however, used her quirk to her advantage, rendering the environment hazardous. Had this not been training, she could have made the acid very dangerous. The only criticism I have is that she was also not taking this seriously. Though unlike Midoriya, she didn't let this keep her from the objective. That is correct, All Might said. Crap, she mentioned nearly everything. He cleared his throat and turned to address the 4 students. You all did well for your first time, but remember that you must be careful when you give it your all to defeat villainy. Even the smallest actions can have large consequences. Yes, All Might Sensei. The 4 bowed. Now, on to the next matchup. Normal talking, go beyond, plus ultra. Thinking, go beyond, plus ultra. Over radio, speaker, go beyond, plus ultra. All Might speaking, go beyond, plus ultra. All Might thinking, go beyond, plus ultra. All Might over radio, speaker, go beyond, plus ultra. Sound effects, BLAM. Is, computers, go beyond, plus ultra. Speaking another language. Now that the class had gotten enough answers from Midoriya regarding his suit, the 16 students not taking the test sat down in their seats. Midoriya made sure that his suit's cameras were active and recording the fights so that he could take notes not only on his classmates' abilities, but also see how their costumes and support items worked in the field. After all, he wanted to make sure that the next items his classmates requested would be up to par. Fumikage Takoyami and Hantashiro vs Koji Koda and Momo Yaoyorozu. The fight started off in favor of the villain team. In the time to prepare, Koda had summoned an army of pigeons and rats to carry several flashbombs Momo created, rightly believing that such intense light would weaken the sentient quirk. However, the hero team did fairly well all things considered. Hanta managed to slow down the swarm by using his tape in a way similar to flypaper to trap the animals long enough for him to pull Takoyami along. Unfortunately, the two were eventually overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, especially when Momo started coating the animals in animal-friendly soap to counter the tape, allowing the villains to claim victory by capture. Tsuyu and Shoto Todoroki vs Rikido Sato and Tenya Ida. To call this matchup a fight would have been generous. The minute the test began, Todoroki froze the entire building over and walked inside past the shivering forms of Sato and Ida. Tenya had managed to free himself by using the heat of his engines, but by that time, Todoroki had claimed the weapon. Asui was incapacitated by the cold, so she stayed outside, although Todoroki didn't seem to care beyond a warning he gave prior to his attack. The whole thing took only 4 minutes, not that Todoroki appeared happy about it. Toru Hagakure and Minru Mainta vs Yuga Aoyama and Ejiro Kirishima. Once the clock began, Ejiro ran off, eager to confront the two in a head-on match. Unfortunately, a hit-and-run tactic led to his defeat when Toru tricked him into running into a stairwell filled with several of Mainta's purple balls, trapping him long enough to get capture tape wrapped around him. Aoyama fared a bit better, though initially he was caught off guard by Mainta scaling the outside walls with his balls and coming in through a back window. Regardless, Aoyama defended the weapon admirably. Mainta dodged the beams by tossing several of his orbs around and bouncing off of them like a pinball. Though he was eventually hit by the laser, it did give Toru enough time to grab the weapon. Needless to say, everyone was surprised at Mainta having been the one to suggest the strategy. Denki Kaminari and Kyoka Jiro vs Mashurao Ajiro and Mizo Shoji Ajiro, aided by Mizo, set up several barricades of furniture and crates to try and hold back the opposing team. Mizo returned to the room with the bomb, his arms transformed into various eyes and ears, using his radio to guide Mashurao. Upon entering, Jiro directed Kaminari, who ran ahead to attack Ajiro. Ojiro did his best to keep his distance and slow down Kaminari, but the latter surprised him with a pair of barbed darts on wires that shot out of his sleeves and latched onto his uniform, zapping him like a stun gun. With Ojiro down for the count, Kaminari joined back up with Gyro, who was having trouble with Shoji. The many-armed student had ambushed Gyro from behind a door. Gyro in turn had been so focused on weaponizing her earjacks that she neglected her hand-to-hand, and as a result was suffering for it. The gauntlets she wore threw off the balance of her arms and made the larger teen able to pin her down. It took a minute, but Gyro was able to knock him away with a blast from her gauntlets, and reached the bomb in time while the newly arrived Kaminari used his electricity to keep Shoji back. Midoriya sat with his classmates, observing each battle and dutifully taking notes in a notebook that everyone else is sure he pulled out of thin air. Bakugo sat in the corner, silently watching the matchups with a scowl. The most reaction anyone saw out of him was a jaw drop from Todoroki's match, but otherwise he was silently stewing in his anger. Thankfully, no one required immediate medical attention, save Isui, but a heated blanket and hot water bottle created by Momo helped the poor frog stay conscious enough to observe the rest of the matches. Good work, everyone. No major injuries have been made, and you all took this test seriously. Regardless if you won your match or not, you all did very well for your first training session. All Might proclaimed. Hero, to have such a proper class after Aizawa-sensei's class. It's kind of anticlimactic, Isui muttered. We're free to have proper classes as well, All Might assured them. You should all get changed back into your uniforms and head back to your classroom. Now watch how a pro hero exits. Without another word, the #1 pro hero took off, running off down the hallways. Maybe I should look into giving him a holographic disguise belt or something, Midoriya thought to himself quietly as the rest of the student body stared at their retreating teacher in awe. You were amazing in battle, Kaminari, Midoriya complimented. He, like the rest of the boys of Class 1A, were changing out of their hero costumes and back into their school uniforms. Kaminari smiled bashfully as he returned his hero costume back to its storage case. Thanks, but really it's due to my costume. If I tried attacking without that built-in power dispersal thing, I'd have shorted out my brain. Is your brain shorting out dangerous for you? Shoji asked the electric boy, using a mouth that appeared on one of his arms, which he seemed to prefer over speaking normally. Nah, but I act stupid for a few minutes while my brain reboots, he admitted. In the middle of battle, that could cause trouble, Ojiro said thoughtfully. I know, that's why I was glad that the guy who responded to my email suggested the support items, Kaminari said. Midoriya stayed silent. He had, like Ochako questioned, worked on designing many of his classmates' costumes and support items. He thought of admitting it to them, but a glare from Ida at his blockbuster suit kept him silent. After all, Midoriya didn't know how they would feel knowing that their support items had technology derived from several villains of the past, including the Sinister Six. Hey guys, I found something amazing. Minda's excited shout drew everyone's attention to the wall, where the shortest classmate had pulled back a poster. Some heroic upperclassmen drilled a peephole into the girls' locker room. Minda, I demand that you put that poster back, Ida immediately shouted. We need to alert a teacher at once. Oh come on, one little peek wouldn't hurt, Minda protested. Minda, Midoriya's voice held an edge to it. Don't do it or you'll regret it. Remember what Aizawa-sensei warned you. Well, as long as no one tells Aizawa-sensei, then it should be. Minda's protest was cut off by him looking through the peephole, only to scream when a stringy-haired ghost girl jumped through with an inhuman screech mixed with television static. 𝐬𝐻. Everyone jumped back in fright. Well, everyone but Todoroki and Midoriya, the latter of whom just sighed. I told you you'd regret it. What was that? Minda cried out, shivering at the still ghost. A moment later, the ghost, or rather, the hologram, vanished. Sadako from the Ringu films, Midoriya clarified, going to the peephole and digging out a very small holocube with a long, thin tool from his belt. I found the hole while changing, but didn't have the means to properly fill it in, so I left one of my holocubes there as a plug. You jerk, Minda shouted as he got up. Why'd you pull a nasty trick like that? Are you seriously pulling the victim card after you tried to peek at the girls' locker room? Midoriya countered. The girls deserve to feel safe. He's got a point, dude, Kaminari said, the first of the other boys to recover from the fright. You wanted to look at the girls too, Minda shot back. Yeah, but I wasn't going to be a sicko about it, Kaminari defended. Sicko? Minda asked. Midoriya was about to shout at him when he realized Minda wasn't kidding or being sarcastic. Do you seriously not realize that what you did was crossing a line? Midoriya asked. It's not like I was groping them, I was just looking. Minda defended himself. That's not the point, Midoriya snapped. The girls have a right to privacy, and you're violating that privacy. No one's getting hurt, Minda protested. Besides, you see how they all dress, in skin-tight outfits that show off their luscious curves. If they didn't want to be stared at, why would they? Minda began before Midoriya cut him off. Do you actually want to save lives, or are you just here to stare at women like a creep? Midoriya stormed out, angry, while Mind to himself was silent. Are you sure Mido bro wants to be a villain? Kirishima asked Ida, who had also fallen silent. From the other side of the wall, Jiraiya removed her earjack from the locker room wall. She had already discovered the peephole and alerted the other girls, while deciding to set up an ambush for any boy, Mind to cough, stupid enough to try and use it. While she was ready to jab her earjacks through, she was surprised to hear that one of her classmates already took care of it and chewed the purple-haired boy out for his gross behavior. I think it's safe now, Gyro told the other girls. Midoriya took care of it with a hologram thing. Oh, phew, Toru sighed. That was too close. Why do you care, Kiro? You're invisible, Asui questioned, her tone as blunt as ever. That's not the point, Toru cried out indignantly. You're right, sorry, Asui amended. You should feel safe too, Kiro. The girls resumed packing up their costumes, making idle conversation about the fights when Mina spoke up. Hey, why do you guys think Midoriya picked Mysterio for his identity? Everyone turned to Uraraka who, put on the spot, struggled to come up with a decent answer. He didn't tell me the reason for picking Mysterio specifically, she muttered. But he said he thought he was quirkless for most of his life, and Mysterio was from the pre-quirk age of heroes, right? Hero, you think he might have felt a kinship with him, since both didn't have powers? Asui asked. I don't know, Uraraka admitted, but I do think Deku's here to be a hero, no matter what identity he takes up. But then, why not someone like Iron Man? Momo questioned. He didn't have a quirk or mutation. I thought he did have one. Extremis, right? Mina questioned. No, Extremis was an attempt at recreating the Captain America formula. Jiraiya explained. Tony Stark took it to save his life and got the ability to psychically communicate with electronics, at least for a short while. The pre-quirk era is so confusing, Toru muttered, the other girls voicing their agreement. I hope you realize just how fortunate you are, Bakugo. Bakugo didn't look up at his teacher, instead just quietly glaring at his desk while his homeroom teacher continued. If your attack had directly hit Midoriya, that would be grounds for suspension at best, and jail time at worst, Aizawa said. As it is, you've got one strike on your record. Do something like this again, and you'll be expelled on the spot. Are we clear? Yes, sensei, Bakugo muttered. Good. The rest of you did decently in your battles, but decent isn't enough, Aizawa said to the students, who sat up in attention. By tomorrow morning, I'll have written up a comprehensive report of your battles, areas you need to work on, and suggestions for improvement. Midoriya relaxed in his seat. He had been concerned that Aizawa would call him out for not using his quirk in the battle, but it seemed that he understood Midoriya's desire to not shatter his bones again. The rest of the classes went by silently, though Midoriya noticed some of his classmates, mainly Mineta and Ida, were more reluctant to speak with him. Even those that did talk to him still gave him looks, not ones of suspicion, thankfully, but questioning. In some ways it was worse than outright fear. At least with fear, Midoriya knew how to present himself as a hero to assure them. But with questioning, Midoriya didn't know how to act, so they knew he was sincere. This continued for the rest of the day, up until it was time to leave. Midoriya headed for the front gate, where Mei was waiting for him. Deku, Midoriya looked up as Bakugo approached him. Catch on, he yelped. Is everything alright? You're not experiencing any side effects from the gases I used, are you? Because I've only tested it on. Why didn't you use your quirk in the fight? The boy asked him, ignoring his questions. I already said why. I didn't want to break my bones again, Midoriya said, confused. I used a massive attack on you, and all you did was spray that crap on me. You didn't even use the capture tape. Bakugo interrupted. Do you not think I'm worth going all out on? Of course you are, Midoriya shot back. But I wanted to win on my terms. Strength I can't use as a liability, like Aizawa-sensei said, so I used my brain. And it was just a test. It didn't need just a test. It was a fight against me, Bakugo shouted. Not everything is about you, Midoriya shouted back before he could stop himself. Bakugo stared at him, his expression unreadable. Before Midoriya could say any sort of apology or explanation, Bakugo changed the subject. How did you get powers? A super soldier serum. A deal with some villain. Exposure to radiation. Despite the tense tone, Midoriya didn't detect any of Bakugo's usual explosive temper. Weirdly enough, that just made him more concerned that the explosive teen was going to go off in anger. I can't tell you, Bakugo, but this power I was given is a quirk, Midoriya said. Aizawa couldn't have blocked my power during the quirk apprehension test otherwise. Bakugo was silent, quietly considering the words in his head. Get that power under control, Deku. Because the next time we fight, I want to beat you at your strongest. No bullshit illusions or robots, got it? Midoriya gulped but nodded, watching the boy exit the school in silence. Catching up to Mei, he smiled and greeted her. Hey Mei, how was class? It was amazing. We made so many babies, she proclaimed, as usual not caring about how she sounded. Babies. Midoriya looked over, seeing the incredulous look on 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿's face, while next to her, Mina just smiled deviously as if she heard some juicy gossip. Midoriya, for his part, just sighed. Phrasing. Remember that discussion you and 𝗬𝗫 had? Oh, right. 𝐬 said before turning and bowing in apology. Sorry for offending you. I call my inventions babies, since they were made from my efforts and are all but my children. Oh, I get it, 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 said, her frustration slowly fading away. So you two aren't dating? Mina pouted. Midoriya was about to explain when 𝐬 began roaring in laughter, even grabbing her stomach from the effort. Date Doria? No thanks, he's got a great mind, but I don't think I could ever bring myself to be attracted to him. 𝐬 explained bluntly. I feel so wanted, Midoriya muttered dryly. 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 giggled, feeling relief from 𝐬's explanation. So if you two aren't dating, how do you know each other? 𝐬 helped me develop my suit, Midoriya explained as the girls joined the two inventors in walking toward the bus stop. Oh, really? Mina was surprised at how casually Midoriya admitted this. And you don't mind working on, well, a persona with a history behind it, Midoriya suggested. Well, yeah, Mina said. A lot of people might see it as untrustworthy. So, it just means more attention for us and our babies, 𝐬 reaffirmed. Midoriya smiled, glad that his friend was still behind him on his endeavors. Your babies? Mina asked. How many have you two made? Together. Almost 100 different projects, 𝐬 stated proudly. Oh, is this all stuff you made for wondrous might and heroism? 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 blurted out before she could stop herself. Wondrous? Wait, you made our class costumes? Mina asked, surprised. No, but I did give some input on the designs of about 9 of them, Midoriya half admitted. It was technically true. He had not worked on the costumes themselves, that having been 𝗬𝗫. So that's why that email's writing felt familiar, Mina said with a smile. Thank you for helping with our costumes. Oh, no problem, Midoriya said, a small smile forming on his face at the gratitude the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 showed him. I hope your support in my choice of persona didn't make you unpopular or disliked. Hey, it's fine, Mina brushed off. I'm a girl with non-human features who sprays dangerous substances from my body. If I can't handle a few stares or dirty looks, then I wouldn't have picked being a hero as my choice of career. After a moment, the 𝗏𝗏𝗏's expression became thoughtful. Although, now that you mention it, I do want to know why you picked Mysterio. Midoriya stopped, thinking quietly about how to best put it without revealing everything. I originally stumbled into the Mysterio identity, you could say. Seeing he had the attention of Mina and 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿, Midoriya continued. It's a story I'm not exactly fine with sharing just yet, but I think my choice in being Mysterio was solidified when a classmate of mine had to leave my middle school over a rumor about having a villain for an uncle. Oh, that's awful, 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 cried out. Mina remained silent, but her expression was enough to show that she agreed with the rosy-cheeked hero student. Yeah, it got really bad for him. I don't know what happened to him after he left, but that event, it's always stuck with me, Midoriya admitted. 𝐬 looked over, now more interested. Even she had not been made privy to that fact. I mean, my quirk came in late, so I know what it's like to have people see you as lesser. But even I didn't have it that bad. All over a rumor that I don't even know if it was true. So, I decided that if I could take Mysterio's name and persona, redeem it, maybe I could show people that being connected to a villain doesn't define who or what you are. Midoriya finished, rubbing the back of his neck in embarrassment. I probably sound really cheesy, like those old Captain America films. I think it's admirable, 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 protested. It's a little cheesy, but then so is All Might, Mina reminded them with a shrug. Yeah, oh, that's our train. 𝐬 pointed to the approaching train. Midoriya yelped and sped ahead. See you guys next week. Bye, Deku. Mina watched her classmate enter the train, then turned towards 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿, a smirk on her face. So, Deku, already laying a claim on him, For a few seconds 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 stared at Mina, not understanding what the pink girl had said. The moment she did, however, 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 immediately blushed and covered her face, hovering for a moment. It's not like that. Sure it isn't, Mina said with a coy smile while 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 shut off her quirk and landed with a quiet grunt. She knew the sight of a crush when she saw one. And 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 was definitely crushing, even if she didn't know it yet. To be fair, she could see why someone would go for Midoriya. He was like a scared little puppy that somehow could also kick your ass if you weren't careful. She herself wasn't interested in a relationship with the green-haired boy, but she was more than happy to play matchmaker. I gotta go, see ya, 𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿 said in a single breath, running away to a different train. Mina just watched the girl leave. Oh yeah, she was definitely going to enjoy this. Hey 𝗬𝗫, we're back, Midoriya called out as he and 𝐬 entered the workshop, carrying their inventions in their backpacks. An electric orb of blue energy appeared for a moment, dissipating to reveal 𝗬𝗫, who stood up and adjusted his suit. I saw you had fight training today. How did the blockbuster hold up in combat? Midoriya, carrying his broken drones and holocubes in a sandwich bag, looked over. Well, the helmet withstood a direct blast from Bakugo's gauntlets at full tank, so that new helmet material is definitely a keeper. Gonna need to repair the refractive scales, some of the drones, and a couple of the holocubes, though. Subaraya nodded, but made a face like he just ate a sour lemon. I still do not understand why you designed something so dangerous for Bakugo. It's what he requested, Midoriya explained as he deposited the broken drones and cubes into a scrap bin. Besides, Bakugo, for all his faults, wants to be a hero, and I'm not going to deny him that over something as petty as some strained history, even if he plans to use that against you. So illogical, Subaraya muttered. Well, it's a good thing I know exactly what he's capable of, Midoriya countered. He doesn't know I made those gauntlets, and I didn't give him any suggestions for improvement, so I can control just how dangerous he is. Makes sense to me. Mei piped up from her workbench, having immediately begun working on a new support item once she set her stuff down. Oh, is that the jetpack inspired by the Buster hero, Airjet? Midoriya asked, setting down the Mysterio suit on a work table. Yup, Mei confirmed with a smile. This is one of the babies I plan on using in the sports festival. That reminds me, I received word from Nezu regarding your use of support items in the festival. Subaraya spoke up, printing out the notice. Unfortunately, as he is in the hero class, Midoriya can only bring one non-required support item with him into the games. Oh, what? Mei pouted while Midoriya retrieved the notice to read over. That's lame. What if you were like Iron Man or something? I guess they would have to make do with a model of 𝐀𝐻 armor or something. Midoriya muttered, biting his lip. Well, I still have a few ideas to help us show off our gadgets. Such as? Subaraya asked. I'm only allowed to bring in one support item, but support course students can bring as many gadgets as they can carry. Midoriya reminded the two with a smirk. Mei looked up with a smile. Oh, how devious. But we'll still be limited by what Mei can carry, Subaraya pointed out. True, but I have a plan for that. I just need a bit more detail about it first. Midoriya brushed off. For now, just focus on making the drones. Prioritize the SFX drones, but make sure we have plenty of scenery models. Load them up with various programs and scenarios. Since the first part of the sports festival is all about thinning the herd, we'll need drones with speed, evasion, and shields as the priority. The second bout is always a team-based exercise, so for those we'll need some drones armed with non-lethal takedown methods. So equip the guns and launchers with concussion missiles, rubber darts, and capture foam sprayers. Midoriya continued. Make sure we have enough scenery drones to cover the stage. Lastly is the one-on-one competition. Midoriya stopped to think. I might forego the use of drones in that one. Show everyone that I can use my quirk and that I'm not too reliant on my technology. Though, maybe we could implement the new actor models we developed, Mei suggested with a smile. We could, Midoriya said. It might be overkill, and I doubt we'll need too many of them. But I think it should be fine, as long as we're careful. Add a few dozen actor models to our group. I fail to see how Nezu will approve of any of this, Subaraya stated bluntly, though he still commanded the assembly stations to begin work on the drones. If nothing else, they'd be able to test the models for any defects or problems. I just need to convince him with the right argument, Midoriya said. And that argument is? Subaraya asked. I haven't thought of it yet, Midoriya admitted. I mean, I still need to work on the speech I'll be giving to everyone. Subaraya sighed. Then we best work on that before something else interrupts us. She was tired. She was hungry. Her mouth felt dry. Her head was throbbing. She had cuts and bruises. Her bare feet ached. But she didn't stop. She had to keep running. She could hear that the bad men weren't far behind her. It was only through either pure luck or divine intervention that she was able to escape. A car accident while the men transporting her allowed her to get out, with miraculously only minor injuries. Unfortunately, the guards recovered fast and followed her. Worse still, she didn't know where she was, and the area looked abandoned. Not one person had emerged, not even to check on the wreckage of the crash. That's because no one wants to help a cursed child. That man's voice muttered in her ear. They'd just give you back to me, and I'd be forced to punish you. She ran up the stairs of a structure with glass ceilings. It looked like she was at a building one of her books showed her. A train station, if she was remembering it right. Hello, child. With a yelp, she looked up. There was a young woman there, with bright red hair and pupilless eyes of yellow that glowed like the glowing orb in the sky, the sun, if she remembered right. Why not take the train? You'll get to where you need to, she said with a smile that was trying to be kind, but came off more than a little scary, like when the bad men were trying to get her to calm down and cooperate before cutting into her. Before the girl could refuse, she heard a shout from the bad men. They had spotted her. The woman held out a small slip of paper to the child. Give this to the man who asks for tickets, and get off at Mustafa. not seeing much other choice. The girl snatched the paper and ran onto the train just in time for the doors to shut. The men, wearing variations of a plague doctor's mask, ran up just in time to see her train pull out of the station. "Shit, the boss is gonna be so pissed," one of them said. "Hey, I'm not exploding over this. You drove into that van. I told you." The brakes failed as we approached the intersection. "Everyone, shut up. We're not dead yet. We can still get her at the next stop. Shiro, find out what that train's schedule is," the leader interrupted. Quickly the men split up, not one of them having seen the woman the little girl was looking at despite being only a meter away from them. "I'll be seeing you soon, Iri," the woman said with a smirk before vanishing from the spot. The girl, Iri, got off the train at Mustafu Station, like the lady with the red hair and yellow eyes told her to. She looked around, and spotting no one wearing a plague mask, ran down the steps of the beat-up station. The area she was in was run down and filthy, but there weren't any of the masked men around, at least as far as she could see, and none of them had an invisibility quirk that she knew of, so it looked like she was safe for the moment. Come to think of it, there weren't many people around at all. She saw an old apartment complex, tall and closed off, but with a gap in one of the windows that was just large enough for her to squeeze through. It took some effort and sucking in her narrow frame, but she managed to get inside. The room was almost as filthy as the outside had been. There was rotting furniture strewn about. Graffiti covered the walls, and the front desk looked as though someone with an addiction had taken up residence there previously. If the old needles with bent tips and pungent residue scattered around were any indication, it looked like the perfect place to stay, at least for now. No one to report her back to the men, and no one for her curse to hurt. So, going upstairs, Iri found an old tarp and curled up under it, shivering but satisfied that she found someplace safe. "What's with all the reporters?" Midoriya looked up from his notebook at May's question. Like the support student said, there was a crowd of reporters hanging outside the gate to the high school, demanding to be let in. "You don't think they know about my persona?" Midoriya asked. He didn't think any of his friends would babble about his choice to the media, but that nagging fear tugged at his brain. It flared up the moment the reporters spotted them and immediately ran over, microphones and cameras taking aim like daggers and guns. "You there? What can you tell us about All Might as a teacher? Divided by is he a good teacher or awful? Divided by what does his curriculum consist of? Divided by is his teacher's suit part of the Zelensky line?" Although Midoriya was trained by Tsuburaya to handle the media, the forceful means by which the reporters asked him overwhelmed the poor boy and he found himself stammering. Well, my students need to get to class." "Move aside." Midoriya sighed in relief. He never thought he would be so happy to see Aizawa's grumpy face leering at someone. Muttering an apology, Midoriya quickly followed May and Aizawa into the school, secretly relieved that the reporters were just fishing for a story about All Might. Behind him, he could hear President Mike trying to quell the upset reporters. "Yeesh, if this is what you'd have to go through to be a hero, then I don't think I'd ever have the stomach for it," May muttered as she walked onto the grounds. "Why not?" Midoriya asked his friend. "I dislike crowds asking questions, unless we're talking about stuff I like," May admitted. "Mom thinks it's 'cause I might be neurodivergent, but I'm not sure. Never got diagnosed for it, and I keep putting it off." "You could go underground, like Mr. Aizawa or Daredevil," Midoriya suggested. "They don't usually deal with the press." Maybe. I think I'll stick with designing and building support gear." May shrugged after a moment of thought. Neither of the two students paid attention to how agitated the crowd behind them was growing, nearly reaching a boiling point of hunger for gossip. "Hey, we're reporters. We have a right to know the truth." The woman who shouted stepped forward towards the school, but a barrier rose up from the ground, blocking her. "What? Oh, that's the UA defense barrier," another reporter explained. "It keeps out anyone who isn't a student, staff member, or lacks a visitor's pass. No way to get inside. Couldn't we just climb or leap over it?" Another asked. "I heard there's hidden turrets with rubber bullets, and I'm not that eager to find out if it's true." A fourth responded. The first reporter huffed and stormed off, bumping into a young man in a black hoodie that she didn't even bother to apologize to. The boy's fist, save for a single finger, clenched. He wanted to dust that hero-glorifying NPC for daring to bump into him, but doing so would mean failing the stealth mission he was entrusted with. So he held himself back, though he longed to scratch at his neck in its place, but he couldn't afford to attract too much attention. Not yet, at least. The idea of what would be coming from this brought a smile to the boy's chapped, cracked face. "Mission start. Settle down, class," Aizawa muttered as he entered the classroom, which was almost immediately silent. 8 seconds, getting better. Aizawa walked up and down the rows, handing back various graded homework. "President Mike will be with you shortly for your first lesson. But first, we have to take care of something that will determine the future of your hero careers." Immediately everyone tensed up. What was it going to be? An all-out brawl? A fight against the teachers? A hard test? You need to pick out a class representative. The underground hero continued as he went back up front. The class slumped in relief, glad that it was just normal school stuff. Of course, just because it was ordinary didn't mean it was important. In most schools, the title held little actual meaning or relevancy, but in hero schools, it was much more important. Being class representative meant that you were a capable leader, that everyone in your group looked up to you. It was a cap in one's feather, a great way to show you would be an excellent choice for a sidekick to any hero on the lookout for a potential recruit. So, of course, everyone started arguing about who would be the best pick to lead them. I should be in charge. I'm better than all of you extras. I'm in charge. Why would we pick you? You're a jerk. The fuck you say, raccoon eyes. Why not put it to a vote? Everyone turned to the green-haired boy, who was also the only one who hadn't thrown his hat into the ring. Putting it to a vote seems like the most fair way to choose who should get the spot. Oh, you just want everyone to vote for you. Minda accused the illusionist, who just shook his head. Actually, I'm not entering this race. You can vote for whoever you want, just not me, please. You're not. How come? You're going to get a lot of attention. And wasn't Mysterio an attention seeker? Gyro asked, but fell silent at the unintended accusation she had made. Thankfully, Midoriya didn't seem bothered by it. The original was, yeah, Midoriya admitted. But like you said, I'm probably already going to get a lot of attention just for being a villain persona user, so there's no point in being the class representative, since that just means I'll be getting more responsibilities for little benefit. Besides, I'm busy enough without having to organize the classes. Everyone stared at the surprisingly thoughtful response to the boy. Even Ada, who still had severe misgivings about Midoriya's choice in personas, had to admit he could see the points his classmate was raising. Wait, what's to stop everyone from just voting for themselves? Mina asked. Ada looked down and thought, contemplating this, before reaching a conclusion. Well, in that case, if one person still ends up with more votes than the other, then it just means that they've earned the rest of the class's respect. Is this acceptable, sensei? Do whatever you want, just get it done by the end of the day, Aizawa said dismissively as he climbed into his sleeping bag for a nap. Okay then, I guess we're voting. Zero piped up. Well, if anyone else wants to step down, I guess now's the time to speak up. Momo spoke up. After Toru and Kota both stepped down from the running, the class wrote down their votes on slips of paper and gave them to Jiraiya, who gathered them in a cup and wrote the results on the chalkboard. So, it looks like we have Tenya Ida as class representative and Momo Yaoyorozu as the vice representative, Jiraiya noted. Indeed, while almost everyone else had voted for themselves, there were 4 votes for Tenya and 3 for Momo. The fuck? Why didn't anyone else vote for me? Bakugo snarled in anger. Midoriya just rolled his eyes and went back to his notebook, where he was looking over possible upgrades for his hero costume, namely the cape. Now that that's settled, get your English books out, Aizawa mumbled from his bag as President Mike walked in, who's ready for some English-style sentence structuring. I still can't believe we've got a pro hero cooking our meals for us. Ochako listened to Midoriya, who was talking between bites of katsudon. Ever since he had learned that the rescue hero lunch rush worked at this school, Midoriya couldn't help but be in awe over it, even if it had been barely half a month into their school year. Yeah, he's really good at it too. I haven't had tempura this good in ages, she agreed with a smile. Hey, Doria. Midoriya looked up, spotting Mei approaching their table, carrying a bowl of ramen with an energy drink. Mind if I eat with you? Go right ahead, Midoriya said with a smile, moving over so his friend could sit beside him. This is Ochako Uraraka, remember her? Nope, Mei admitted shamelessly as she dug into the noodles. Midoriya sighed while Ochako puffed out her cheeks in annoyance, an act Midoriya definitely did not find cute. Nope, not at all. Sorry, Ochako, Mei doesn't really have the best memory for names. Midoriya apologized for his friend, who had taken out a magazine depicting the latest invention from Parker Industries and was reading it as she ate. Well, to be fair, we only met once a while ago, Ochako admitted. And you don't usually come here for lunch. Mei prefers to eat in the workshop, Midoriya explained. Of course, he didn't mention that this was only when Mei could be reminded to stop and eat. Back at Wondrous Might and Heroism, there were times when Mei actually ate as she worked or fell asleep while making her babies, even if she was in the middle of welding. The number of fires and crumbs Tsuburaya had to deal with would have made the AI go on a murderous rampage if she wasn't so good at her job. Yep, and I was planning to do it today as well, but I found that one of my classmates was working on her project for the sports festival, Mei explained after a drink. She likes listening to J-pop as she works, and it was getting on my nerves, so I left to hang out with you instead. Is this the exchange student you met? Midoriya asked, remembering Mei having grumbled about someone who got on her nerves. Yeah, she's a super genius who got moved a year or 2 ahead of her old school, Mei confirmed through a mouthful of ramen. Thankfully, the girl swallowed before continuing. She said she wanted to be in the hero course, but couldn't enter it legally due to her young age, so she's sticking to the support course for now and switching over once she can. But that's not the crazy thing. Midoriya raised an eyebrow. It took quite a bit to grab May's attention, especially since May was usually so unflappable about surprises. What's the crazy thing? Her name's P. A shrill alarm rang out, interrupting their chat. Everyone in the cafeteria sat up, muttering in fear and panic as a siren started blaring. What's going on? Midoriya asked, an upperclassman responding as they ran past. Someone's breached the school. It hasn't happened here in the 3 years I've attended UA. Everyone ran out to the hallways, panicking. It was a stampede, and there was a very real danger of someone getting hurt in the process. It's the news. Midoriya looked over at his pink-haired friend, who had been pressed up to the window with Ida. What? It's just the reporters from outside. They got in somehow, May elaborated before she was separated by the tide of panicking students. Midoriya thought quickly. There was no way he was going to get everyone's attention. Not with the crowd shoving and pushing too much. He didn't have his drones with him, although 𝐻𝐚𝐽 was near him. But then he saw Ida nearby. And thinking quickly, Midoriya came up with a plan. 𝐻𝐚𝐽, use your quirk on Ida, he shouted. 𝐻𝐚𝐽 looked up, confused, but wasn't able to ask for an elaboration before Midoriya was separated from her. So, putting her faith in her friend, the gravity girl made her way over to Ida and desperately slapped his back. This did the trick. As Midoriya had predicted, with his gravity removed, Ida was able to rocket up to the ceiling and get everyone's attention. With only a few words, he explained the situation and calmed everyone down. So it was that the students, most of them feeling embarrassed at how they had reacted in a crisis, went back to their classes in an orderly fashion. Man, that was so crazy, Kirishima said. How'd the press get inside? No idea. They must have used a quirk to get past the barrier, Midoriya theorized. Midoriya. The boy in question looked up to see his vice representative walking over. Yes, Ida-kun. The bespectacled boy removed his glasses and rubbed them with a cloth before speaking. You told 𝐻𝐚𝐽 to send me into the air, even though you were closer. Why? I'm not good with crowds unless I'm in my persona, Midoriya admitted. I don't think I could handle speaking to people like that, even in a crisis. And you have the strength of personality to do it better than I ever could. You had that much faith in me? Ida asked, touched and confused. After all, he had at least twice now made accusations against Midoriya for not wanting to take heroism seriously. And yet he still picked Ida to get the message out. Well, yeah, why else would I vote for you as the class rep? Midoriya said with a smile, to the speedster's shock. Thank you for that. With that, Ida walked away, deep in thought. It was clear to him that, in spite of his choice in personas, Midoriya was, at heart, a good person. Although he would still have to try and deter him from being Mysterio. For now, Ida was eager to get to work as the class rep. Nezu looked at the remains of the security gate, 𝗵𝘃𝐸, ectoplasm, and power loader alongside him. The impressive metal barrier had been reduced to mere dust and rubble, with only scraps of metal remaining. Do we have any ideas what caused this? The principal asked, sipping a bit of tea as he sniffed the air. His senses were stronger than that of his fellow humans, which allowed him to notice things most other people couldn't. Unfortunately, the crowd of cologne and makeup-wearing reporters overwhelmed any other scent that the intelligent mammal could have picked up. Scans indicate that the molecular bonds in the metal were disrupted by an outside force. 𝗵𝘃𝐸 muttered, inspecting a remaining piece. As I detect no residual energies, chemicals, or heat, I theorize this to be the work of a mutation or quirk, emitter class, most likely one that restructures objects or neutralizes their bonds, much like Onensen's quirk does. So it wasn't melted or eaten through by acid, power loader muttered, picking up a jagged shard from the ground. Placing it in an evidence bag, he turned to ectoplasm. Did the reporters say anything? Plenty, but nothing that would help. The divider hero grumbled. The only useful thing they said was that it was near instant, but none of them were paying close enough attention to see the culprit. Perhaps we require an outside perspective, Nezu muttered, pulling out his phone and dialing up a recently added number. Thank you for calling the 𝐴𝐴𝐽 Aquatic Pet Store. This is 𝗃𝐻𝐴 speaking. How may I help you? A voice spoke up. Oh, I thought this was Doran's costume supplies. Nezu responded with a smirk, while Tsuburaya just sighed and spoke normally. What do you want, you overgrown opossum? Not my species, but a good guess, Nezu responded brightly, before his tone became serious. However, I'm not calling you to play around. Have you seen the news? All I do when not working is watch the news. Tsuburaya grumbled. So I'm guessing this is about the reporters' break-in at the school. Somewhat, yes, Nezu admitted. The reporters were let in because someone destroyed the gate by disintegrating it down to dust. We believe this was caused by a quirk user, or possibly a mutant. None of the reporters have abilities that match this power type. So I wanted to hear the perspective of someone in the know of the underworld, just in case it's something to be concerned with. You assume that just because I'm made from the mind of an American villain, one from several generations ago might I add, that I know every current villain in Japan? Tsuburaya asked bluntly, earning an amused chuckle from Nezu. Not at all. but I was hoping you would help with researching any possible villains who could do something of this caliber. I'll be going through official channels, but you know how villains think and where to look in places heroes don't. Again, I am based on a villain from the past. I doubt that I will be much help." Despite this, Subaru's next words were thoughtful. "Regardless, this could potentially have ramifications for my successor, so I see no reason to turn down this chance to protect Midoriya." Subaru admitted to the principal, "Give me everything you know, and I'll take a look on the dark web, see what rumors have been cropping up." A few days later, Aizawa came in and announced the class was going to go on a trip that day. Once everyone settled back down, he elaborated, pressing a button on a remote to bring out the cases containing the students' various costumes. "We'll be going to an off-site campus facility for rescue training. Whether you wear your costumes or not is up to you," he said, watching the students pick up their cases and return to their seats. "Some of you may find that something about your costume hinders you, or perhaps part of it doesn't work well for rescue training. These are factors you need to consider when you redesign your costume the next time." "Excuse me, Aizawa-sensei." Midoriya raised his hand as he walked back to his desk. When Aizawa grunted at him, the boy continued, "Am I allowed to bring my drones?" "Yes, you may bring whatever support gear you want," Aizawa said dismissively. "Thank you, sensei." Midoriya pulled out his phone, ready to send a command, when a thought came to him. "By the way, do you have the coordinates for the training grounds? I was thinking I could summon a few more drones to join up with me when we get there." "Wait, you've got more?" Jiraiya asked. "How many drones do you have?" Sato yelped as he went back to his desk. Before responding, Midoriya ran the numbers in his head and gave off a rough approximation. About 50 scenery drones, another 50 combat drones, 45 SFX generating drones, and a dozen or so actor models, but those are new and in the testing phase. Midoriya listed off. "Oh, and about 100 holocubes, but those aren't going to be too useful here, I think. Then again, maybe I could modify them to act as beacons in case I have to go someplace that's hard to navigate." While Midoriya descended into a mutter storm, everyone else stared at the boy who had casually admitted to being able to summon a small army with a text message. Even Aizawa didn't know how to respond to this revelation beyond a frustrated sigh. A horde of invisible specters, ready to appear at the master's beck and call in any form he desires. Takoyami muttered in awe. "You said it, bird bro." Kirishima nodded in agreement. The bus drove down the path, the students chatting amicably among themselves. Up front, Aizawa napped in his sleeping bag while Professor Hamada sat in his seat, quietly reading some ancient manga called 𝐸𝐸𝐸 𝐸𝐸𝐸. Midoriya was relaxing in his seat, wearing his full Mysterio costume save for the helmet, which was sitting in his lap. Resting his arms upon said helmet, the boy was fiddling with a scenery drone, the circular device's inner circuits exposed to the boy. Holding an Iron Man-endorsed utility knife, Midoriya tightened a few connections until they were satisfactory. "Dang, that's some advanced tech, bro." Midoriya jumped, looking up to see Kirishima looking over his shoulder. "Oh, thanks." He was about to get back to work when he heard Asui speak up from close by. "Hey Midoriya." "Yes, Asui?" Midoriya asked the frog girl. "First of all, call me Tsu, but after hearing about your army of drones, I think I speak for all of us when I ask, where did you get so much tech that advanced, Kiro?" Froppy asked. Almost instantly most other conversations stopped. Looking over, Midoriya realized that they were all questioning him. I spent a long time studying it," Midoriya mumbled nervously, resignedly setting aside his drone to work on later. "I have this mentor, Subaru. He helped me understand the technology Mysterio used, and later on, he helped me build it with further help from a friend of mine in UAS support course, Mei Hatsu. They don't mind working on villain tech?" Zero asked. "And no, Mei didn't care once I explained what I was going to use it for," Midoriya said, nervous, but choosing his words carefully. "But Subaru, he wanted me to go a different route than being a hero, but he supported my choice to use it this way, in the end. Because, at the end of the day, there's no such thing as an evil quirk or piece of technology, just people who use them for evil, right? Nitroglycerin is used in medicine, but it's also an explosive that can hurt people. Likewise, before my quirk came in, I decided to use this technology to be a hero and save people." Those words, like the few others who heard it before, had an effect on the Greenette's classmates. They had never thought about that perspective before. Even Ada, who still felt conflicted, found himself listening to the boy only a few rows behind him. "Speaking of heroes, I gotta ask, your quirk's a lot like All Might's," Froppy began, while Midoriya went very still in fear. "Don't tell me they've figured out the secret of one for all." Thankfully, Kirishima unintentionally provided a lifeline to distract everyone from the vague possibility. "Yeah, but All Might doesn't break bones when he throws a punch, Asui." "Yeah, I know that, but there is a similarity between Midoriya and All Might's quirks, Kiro, and I wanted to know why he stuck with Mysterio instead of All Might. No offense, Kiro, but super strength quirks don't exactly match up with illusions." And we know you're an All Might fanboy because of that pin you wear, Kiro, so why stick with an identity people would find controversial? 𝐬𝐸 explained, before turning to Kirishima. And I said to call me Kiro. Oh, right, sorry Kirishima said with an embarrassed smile. But yeah, we want to know, so spill the beans, Toru exclaimed, her costume sleeves indicating that she was waving her arms in excitement. Guys, if Midoriya doesn't want to share his secrets, we shouldn't pressure him into revealing it. Momo spoke up, trying to rein her classmates in. No, it's fine, Midoriya assured the creation girl. Everyone's gonna bug me about it when I go pro, so I guess I should get used to telling this story. Midoriya sat up. But first, catch on. Do you remember that museum we visited? The one with the kaiju head from Mysterio's last scheme. The one that banned you for climbing inside the stupid thing? Bakugo asked pointedly. Of course I do. Oh, that's the one in Tokyo, right? Zero piped up. I went there once. I wanted to see Spider-Man, since my fighting style is gonna be similar to his. Why'd you climb inside the exhibit? Sato asked Midoriya, who blushed and rubbed his neck. I was hiding from some bullies who picked on me because of my apparent quirklessness, Midoriya muttered. But anyways, so Midoriya told the enraptured classmates an abridged version of how he found Mysterio's lair. He still kept some things to himself, like where the lair was and Tsubureya's status as an AI tasked with watching over the studio. Midoriya was sure that he caught glances from 𝐵𝐸𝐸𝐸 and Aizawa listening in, most likely shocked at the idea of a relatively infamous villain having been hiding a secret lair under everyone's noses for several generations. The reactions from his classmates were mixed, to say the least. Most of it was in disbelief at the idea of the lair, until Midoriya showed a few safe pictures Tsubureya had selected in case Midoriya wanted to show prospective clients the workshop. There was some nervous glances, but most of the class seemed more curious than afraid. Throughout it, Bakugo seethed silently. He didn't know whether to feel relief or anger at how Midoriya skipped over his involvement in discovering the notebook, since, learning he was a bully definitely wouldn't help. But hearing the Deku brush over him like he was nothing wasn't much better either. Still, part of him wondered why exactly Deku didn't mention his involvement. It would have been the perfect moment for revenge. But instead, he said nothing. Why? Dang, that sounds like something out of a comic, Kaminari said in awe after Midoriya finished his story. And you were training hard to be a hero since you were 8. Without a quirk. So manly, Kirishima said in awe. Midoriya blushed and looked down. Yeah, and, back to what 𝐬𝐸 I told you to call me Kiro. 𝐬𝐸 interrupted calmly. Right, sorry, back to what 𝐬𝐸 was saying. Yeah, with my super strength, I could easily use a different persona. Heck, if I hadn't discovered Mysterio's notebook, I'd probably be dressed up as an All Might-inspired rabbit or something. Midoriya admitted, his blush growing brighter when Ochako giggled at the image. But, I've spent years learning everything about how Quentin Beck, the original Mysterio, did his illusions and tricks. So, I kind of feel like I have to see this through. It's weird, I know. Nah, I get it. There were times I thought of giving up and doing something more practical with my quirk, like being in my parents' construction company, Ochako admitted. But yeah, you want to stick with something you dedicated your life to. So manly, Kirishima muttered. Is that the only adjective you know? Mina asked with a smirk. It's the only adjective I need, he answered with a matching smirk. Oh my gosh, it's the Rescue Hero 13. Ochako practically squealed in delight as the class exited the bus. They were standing outside the building where they were going to be running the training exercise, a massive white dome called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short, unbeknownst to everyone save for Midoriya. There was no less than 60 drones hovering above the gathered students, hidden via cloaking tech. Midoriya thought it might have been excessive to bring so many, but then, the school's motto was Plus Ultra, and there wasn't really a rule against helping his classmates, was there? Besides, he still needed to field test the actor drones. I see I've got a fan. The woman in the pseudo-spacesuit acknowledged, bringing a smile to Ochako's face. Where's All Might? He was supposed to be here, Aizawa questioned, an annoyed glare on his face. Nezu messaged me. Apparently he's reached his limit and will show up only at the end. After Nezu gives him a very stern talking to about punctuality. 𝐵𝐸𝐸𝐸 muttered, subtly holding up 3 fingers to the other teachers. Yep, definitely going to make a hologram belt for All Might. Midoriya noted, his suit picking up the whispered conversation with ease. That man is the height of irrationality, Aizawa muttered with a tired sigh while 13 turned to the students. Hello everyone, and welcome to rescue training. I'm 13, and I designed this facility, she said with a friendly wave. Now, before we begin, there's one thing I'd like to go over first. Or maybe 2 things. 5, a dozen, the rescue hero muttered, well aware of the incredulous looks she was receiving. It took 𝐵𝐸𝐸𝐸 clearing her throat to snap 13 out of her musings. Right, anyways, does anyone here know how exactly my quirk functions? Ochako immediately spoke up, her hand raised. Oh, it's black hole. You can generate a powerful suction from your fingertips that can break up matter down to dust with ease. You've used it on several rescue operations to save countless lives. So this is what being on the receiving end of a fan in 𝗏𝗲 feels like. Midoriya quietly mused to himself, though he couldn't bring himself to be annoyed by it. That's correct. I can use my quirk to easily destroy a mountain of rubble in only a few minutes, 13 said proudly, before her tone shifted to a more serious, somber one. Or kill in just a few seconds. That made everyone stiffen in fear. Well, most of them, though Bakugo did turn to listen to the teacher. When you first came here, you saw what your quirks can do when you went all out. In your first battle trial, you used them in a combat scenario for the first time. But now you need to consider just how dangerous your quirks could truly be. The rescue hero continued. Indeed, many of them stopped to think about what could happen if they truly wanted to hurt someone. Momo could create any weapon or poison she wanted. Mina's acid would dissolve bones at the right intensity. Rikido Sato could snap a man's neck in a sugar high. Zero's tape or Minta's balls could cut off airflow if placed onto the mouth and nose. Ada could potentially kick someone's chest or head in. And Bakugo. Even the boy had to admit that he was more than capable of killing someone if he wasn't careful, as the battle trial proved. And as much as he didn't like how it lacked fighting, Bakugo realized that this lesson might be something worth listening to. That's part of what we're going to be practicing today. 13 continued, distracting the students from the horrible possibilities their powers could be used for. We'll be showing you how to carefully use your quirks in a safe environment so that, once the time comes a real disaster occurs and no other hero is around, you can save lives too. With that, the group was led inside, and they all gasped in wonder. All around them were 6 areas, 2 of them in their own domes, that simulated different environments. One was a peaceful-looking lakeside with a boat and a waterslide-like feature. Another looked like the ruins of an urban city. One looked to be a mountainous region with trees beneath it, to the right of which was a simulated landslide, burying the remains of trees and a few buildings. Lastly, the 2 domes had a flame symbol and a storm cloud, respectively. Welcome to the unforeseen simulation joint. 13 cried out, sweeping out her arms as the last of the students went inside the building and the doors shut. My personal project to help train the future generations. And before she could continue, an alarm rang out from Midoriya's suit. What now, problem child? Aizawa muttered tiredly while Bakugo, already annoyed that there wasn't going to be any fighting, glared at him. Midoriya checked the readings on his gauntlet, expecting it was just a power issue or something minor, but instead found a prelude to something bad. Something's wrong. My suit's long-range signals are being jammed. I can't contact anything outside the building. Midoriya was inputting every command that he could think of, but he couldn't even access the drones directly outside, despite being less than 10 meters away. Wait, are we doing rescue training already? Kaminari asked. Eyebrows knitted in confusion while everyone else murmured in worry. No, that's not part of it, 𝐴𝐴GH. Damixima fell to her knees, grabbing her head while her voice distorted for a brief moment. Hamada-sensei, what's wrong? Achako and Momo ran over, supporting their AI teacher. My backup drive. I can't connect to it. I'm stuck in this body. She looked at her fellow teachers in horror as the lights above them started flickering. Mido bro, please tell me this is just a messed up joke you're playing. Kirishima asked in worry. No, it's not me. Midoriya looked around, spotting something forming in front of the plaza fountain. Midoriya quickly pulled on his helmet, the device lighting up and flooding him with warnings and messages about what was forming beneath, which Midoriya quickly realized was a portal made of black miasma. The first thing through the portal was a severed hand, grasping the face of a young man with silvery blue hair wearing a black jumpsuit. Beside him came a hulking monster with an exposed brain, blank, unblinking eyes, and a yellow beak over jagged teeth. On the other side, several people emerged, led by someone short with what looked horrifyingly like blood moving across a black jumpsuit and mask with a vaguely spider-like red symbol on his face and chest. From there, more and more people emerges, some unfamiliar, some Midoriya recognized vaguely, and some wearing costumes belonging to people from the pre-Quirk era. But all of them, even the portal generator, who turned out to be a humanoid apparently made of the black miasma with only his yellow eyes visible, were clearly one kind of person. What's going on? Who are they? Minta whimpered out, hiding behind Jiraiya in fear. Villains. Real villains. Midoriya spoke aloud in horror. Real villains. While the students around Midoriya were quietly panicking, save for a few, Midoriya forced the bile that threatened to rise up from his throat down, and brought up his command screen. The suit was fully operational in spite of the jamming signal, thankfully, but unfortunately he was unable to send out anything more than very short-range communications, and only to the drones he had on him. Regardless, Midoriya summoned a few of them, commanding them to be cloaked and to get over to the villains. Problem child. Aizawa growled quietly, just gathering information, Aizawa-sensei. Midoriya assured his homeroom teacher. It looks like most of these villains are quirk users with emitter and transformation quirks being the most common. with only a scattering of heteromorphic types and X-gene type mutants, with almost no support items beyond basic aiming tools and melee weapons. All of the ones I can find in my suit's database have charges ranging from theft to murder, but aren't highly ranked, C levels at the worst. However, my suit isn't able to identify the 4 in the back. Midoriya quickly reiterated what his drones were telling him to his teacher, who gave the boy a grateful nod. Thank you for the information, Midoriya. But for now, stay back. Aizawa put his goggles on, then turned to his fellow teachers. 𝐲𝐻 13, stay here and protect the students. See if you can find a way to contact Nezu. Seeing their nods, Aizawa turned to Kaminari and Midoriya. Midoriya, Kaminari, see if you can use your quirk and support items to break through the jammer. I'll handle the villains. Yes, sir, the electric boy said, pulling down his earcom and adjusting it. But Aizawa-sensei, your quirk won't work on all of them, and your fighting style is more suited to hit-and-run tactics or ambushes, not a prolonged battle like this, Midoriya protested, while the other students looked at their homeroom teacher with shock and concern. It's like I told you, Midoriya. No hero can rely on one method alone, Aizawa calmly refuted, and without another word, the man leapt into battle. Naturally, the villains closest to him raised their hands, but out of them only one was able to use their power, a mutant who fired an orb of metal at Aizawa. Aizawa wrapped his scarf around his arm, the orb hitting it and simply losing momentum upon impact, falling lamely, while Aizawa tackled the mutant. What's going on? Why aren't I shooting a GH? A thug's questioning was interrupted by the homeroom teacher launching a right hook into the man's jaw. You idiot. That's the underground hero, Eraserhead. He can erase our quirks just by looking at us, another shouted, running forward with a sword. Aizawa dodged, grabbed the blade in his scarf-coated hand, and struck the man in his throat, sending him sprawling to the ground, gasping for air. Yeah, but I doubt he can stop a heteromorph like me. A villain with 4 extra arms charged forward, ready to pummel the pro-hero, who quietly tossed out his scarf, the material wrapping around the villain's head. I can't see, hell. His protests were cut off by Aizawa pulling himself in and kneeing him in the face. This pattern continued, the villains and thugs trying to fight Aizawa, but each one being quickly taken down, whether it was due to their quirk failing them at an inopportune moment, or their own hubris combined with inexperience. Ugh, it sucks when the heroes live up to their reputation. The man with the severed hands on his body muttered. Tell me about it. The blood-covered villain muttered, his voice surprisingly young. He couldn't have been older than the students they were attacking. Are you going to step in, Blood Spider? The man asked, scratching at his neck in annoyance. Nah, I'll let the help weaken the heroes, then make my move. Blood Spider admitted. Your sensei won't be upset by that, will he, Tamura-kun? These are just trash mobs. We're the only real elites in this group. The handman, Tamura, dismissed. Still, it took a lot of convincing to get sensei to let me bring you in. I want to see if you are a pro or just a noob talking big. Trust me, I'm worth it. Blood Spider insisted. I'm just saving my strength for the real boss, once he shows up. Yeah, why the hell isn't All Might here? Tamura complained, scratching at his neck. All this grinding and party building, and he doesn't even have the courtesy to show up. Then we're just gonna have to grab his attention. Blood Spider turned to the students up on the staircase. Hey Kurogiri, how about you send a couple of the hero students to some of the people we've got waiting? Make them earn their money's worth. Kurogiri turned to Tamura, who nodded. Do as he says, Tamura commanded the portal creator. Very well, Master Shigaraki. Kurogiri nodded, and opened up a portal for himself. 13 looked contemplative for a moment, before turning to 𝐲𝐻. We need to send a message out to the school. Help me get to the doors, I'm sorry, but I cannot allow anyone to leave just yet. The way was blocked by the cloud of miasma that had initially brought the villains there, and the quirk user, his face shrouded within the substance, turned to the students. We are the League of Villains. I apologize for this intrusion, but I was under the impression that All Might was supposed to be here. Was there a change in the schedule? Stay back, students. 𝐲𝐻 threw her arms out, and with a shout in English, her red and purple backpack shifted. Quick as lightning, her delicate, inflated plastic skin fell limp as several plates of purple and red metal formed over her and her suit, secured in place by dozens of small, black robots. Upon her right arm was a pair of cannons, hooked up to tubes that led into the android's body. The right hand was massive, made of those same black micro-robots forming an almost cephalopodic appendage. Clutched tightly in her smaller, normal left hand was a katana hilt, from which shined a blade made of blue plasma that hummed like a lightsaber. Sculpted upon her stomach was a three-eyed monster face, mouth turned down in a snarl. Her boots expanded out, a pair of yellow wheels forming upon the ankles, the edges thin enough to cut into the concrete upon the ground. Lastly, a purple helmet with antennae like ears clamped over her head, a bulletproof visor protecting her face. A suit, designed by her, to invoke the lineage from which she came, and to honor the original team's powers though technological recreation. The whole transformation, despite being incredibly detailed, took only a few seconds to complete. 𝐴𝐲𝐸𝐴 Hero 6, ready to protect, she shouted triumphantly, raising her fist to the heavens. How needlessly dramatic. The warp villain muttered, clearly unimpressed. But we are not the riffraff that's constantly bested by the likes of you. We are here to kill the symbol of peace. Like hell you will. 𝗵𝗃𝐸 looked up in shock, seeing two of her students leap forward. 𝗵𝘃𝐸, Kirishima, stop. When a villain's right in front of us. No way. Kirishima grinned and, his skin becoming hard and jagged, attacked the cloud. The air was filled with explosions as 𝗵𝘃𝐸 repeatedly fired his quirk at the cloud, who hadn't moved from his position. Biting his lip, Midoriya knew better than to charge in and join the two in attacking the villain, but he could at least help his classmates do some real damage. So, activating his suit's scanners, Midoriya checked the readings he got. Tsuburaya had instructed him in fighting all kinds of enemies, and the one before him reminded Midoriya of two different Spider-Man villains, both of whom had very malleable, nearly indestructible bodies. But they held a similar weakness, a centralized point storing their true selves. Aim for the neck. There's something solid there. He called out to his teammates. Don't tell me what to do, Deku, 𝗵𝘃𝐸 shouted. But he aimed higher, just under the eyes, and was rewarded with Kurogiri shouting in pain. The clouds parted just enough to show that the spot struck was some kind of metal neck brace, possibly the only physical part of the villain. A technology user. Damn, Kurogiri turned to Midoriya. We can't have that. Beneath Midoriya, a portal formed beneath him, and Midoriya nearly fell through, had it not been for his classmates. I've got you, Midoriya, Ochako assured him. But only seconds later, she fell through her own portal, as did several other students, including 𝗵𝘃𝐸 and Kirishima. Oh crap. Kaminari's voice was the last thing Midoriya heard before he fell into the inkai blackness. No, 13 cried out in despair. Too late to save the students from the now shutting rifts. You will pay for this, 𝗵𝗃𝐸 shouted, dashing forward. Katana out. Midoriya tumbled through the darkness. He couldn't tell which way was up, and no light shined through the fog surrounding it. He did his best to analyze the situation, but his panic made it difficult. Okay. This isn't going to be easy, but I need to focus. Mysterio's never encountered something like this, and Tsuburaya never trained me for this scenario. Still, I could draw some comparisons to another villain Beck was friends with, Jonathan Owen, villain named the Spot, a D-lister villain and altered who could create portals from the black spots adorning his body. Spider-Man often defeated him by using his spider sense to locate the portal closest to Owen, so theoretically. Suit, scan the environment, locate the energy signature of Kaminari. Midoriya commanded, at the same time reaching behind his back for his combat drone, activating it. Curling up like an acrobat, Midoriya placed his boots atop the drone and stood up. The drone stabilized Midoriya, allowing him to finally get his bearings in the Inkai void. And just in time, since his suit located Kaminari immediately. He's not far, good. Sonar, activate. Cloaking, activate. Midoriya commanded, his suit speaker immediately shutting off. According to the sonar, the environment around him was strange. It almost seemed like he was in some kind of bubble, but with nothing solid. Navigating through it was difficult, but not impossible, and Midoriya quickly emerged in some city ruins. Beneath him, he saw several villains converging on Kaminari and Gyro, the two using their support gadgets effectively to blast back the tough-looking thugs, though it was clear they were getting overwhelmed by the superior numbers. Looks like these people haven't detected me. I can use this chance to pick up my friends. But first I'll need a distraction. Trying to think of a distraction, Midoriya spotted a ruined billboard for a travel company. The image had a plane taking off, kicking up a cloud of dust. Midoriya remembered an incident in his childhood, where to win at a game of quirk dodgeball, Maro had used his quirk, wind cannon, to kick up a small dust storm to blind the opposing team, much to the younger 𝗵𝘃𝐸's anger. That memory made Midoriya smile. Even if he wasn't allowed to participate, he had enjoyed watching the quirks on display, especially since the after-school game was one of the few times they could use it so openly without consequences. But more importantly, it gave Midoriya an idea. Keep going, lightning dolt. Jiraiya panted heavily. The minute she and Kaminari showed up, they were attacked by several villains in hiding. Thankfully, despite their fierce demeanor, it was clear that their attackers had little, if any, training in combat, instead letting their quirks do most of the work. Kaminari would have been having the time of his life had it not been for the very real danger. Still, he couldn't help but feel some level of pride as he tossed out lightning bolt after lightning bolt at any villain who approached. Unfortunately, that pride cost him, a villain vomiting out a paste-like substance that trapped the electric boy. Worse still, the glue seemed to resist his electricity. Kaminari, Jiraiya cried out in distress. Her distraction opening her up to an attack from a bull-type heteromorph, who approached the fallen hero students, pulling out equally massive knuckle dusters, his hair whipping about in the wind. Wait, they were indoors, how could there be? Guys, dust storm. The entire group looked to the right. And indeed, a massive cloud of dust and dirt was rapidly approaching. Gyro covered her eyes and grabbed Kaminari's hand, the dust cloud quickly passing over the two. When it cleared away, the two students had vanished. Where'd the brats go? A man with very long legs asked everyone. How should I know? Responded the bull angrily. You're our lookout. Why didn't you warn us about that dust cloud sooner? Hey, all I saw was a giant cloud of dust that appeared out of nowhere. The long-legged man shot back grumpily. Must have been one of those kids' quirks. A woman with squid tentacles piped up. Everyone, shut up and spread out. They can't have gotten far. The apparent leader, a man with fly features, muttered, taking off into the air. The others grunted, but spread out to search for the missing students. From the ruins of a nearby minimart, Jiryo listened intently to the retreating footsteps, sighing in relief when she heard them leave. Nearby, Midoriya, his helmet clear, was freeing Kaminari from the paste with a yellow-tinted smoke sprayed from his eye clasps. And here I thought 𝐬𝐸 was just being paranoid when he insisted upon the adhesive dissolving spray. Midoriya muttered to himself. Well, I'm not complaining, Kaminari admitted with a smile, pulling free from the glue. I hope this stuff comes out in the wash. That's not our biggest concern, Jiryo muttered in disdain. I can hear about 6 villains in this place, looking for us. Hey Midoriya, can't you just create an illusion or something to take them out? Kaminari asked, only for Midoriya to shake his head. Not without a lot more drones. I have maybe a few dozen on me, but most of them are just SFX and scenery types, and maybe 2 combat types. With them I could maybe take out 2 of the villains. But then they'd be discovered, smashed, and we'd be exposed. Midoriya explained. I've got more than enough combat-capable ones outside the USJ, but with the jamming signal still going there's no way for me to command them to help. I could try to contact my friends through the drones I do have. But that doesn't change the fact that there are still villains outside, and it would take time for our friends to get here. And that's assuming that they aren't dealing with their own villains. Then we need to find a way to take all the villains outside down quickly and fast. Jiryo muttered. Kaminari, do you think you could take them all out at once? Kaminari raised his hand in a so-so gesture. If they were tightly grouped around us, then maybe, yeah. If my quirk's too spread out it won't do any real damage. But that paste guy's quirk resists my own. And Fly Guy's been keeping his distance ever since I started throwing bolts. So we need to gather them in one spot. Midoriya bit his lip, a hand upon his chin. Or, well, the underside of the dome. After a few moments, he flipped open the left gauntlet and typed in a command to the drones. Okay, I think I have an idea, but I'll need some help from you both. What do you need? Kaminari asked. How good are your acting skills? Midoriya asked, pulling out a studio makeup kit from his backpack. I did a play in elementary school where I was a Tengu. Kaminari offered. I'm used to being on stage, but I don't actually have acting experience. Why? Jiryo looked at Midoriya, who opened up the case, selecting a guide booklet labeled horror. I know the Aben festival isn't until August, but I think we can still get some scares, Midoriya said, holding up some latex patches and smirking. Toshinori sat in the principal's office, nursing a mug of tea as the strange mammalian chimera observed him with a deceptively friendly smile. Your fur looks extra glossy today, sir. Toshinori tried. Thank you. The secret is keratin, Nezu happily supplied. But flattery will not get you out of our discussion. I know. Toshinori sighed in defeat. You are a teacher now, Toshinori, Nezu said, visibly calm but with a forceful air usually reserved for disobedient students and self-entitled parents. You have responsibilities to your students, especially your chosen successor. I know, but there were villains attacking, Toshinori began, all of whom were being handled by several equally capable heroes. Nezu sighed. It was like my mentor Rocket Raccoon said. This isn't just about yourself anymore, but the ones under your charge. You need to think about the effects your actions will have in the soon, not just the now, or else you'll only become a hindrance. I suppose, Toshinori muttered, but paused. Wait, how do you know? Nezu and All Might's discussion was interrupted by their phones simultaneously going off. Toshinori pulled his own out and, seeing the caller, answered. 𝐬𝐸, what's Midoriya's signal is offline. 𝐬𝐸 interrupted, panic clear in his voice. Signal? What signal? Toshinori asked. Midoriya's suit emits a GPS tracking signal that I can detect in case he needs more drones at his location. But right now it's been cut off. 𝐬𝐸 hurriedly explained. Perhaps he simply shut it off, Nezu suggested, but nonetheless brought out his tablet to try and contact the teachers for confirmation. Not likely. He only keeps it off if he needs to remain completely hidden from anyone with extrasensory abilities, 𝐬𝐸 explained. And Midoriya's class is just doing rescue missions, Toshinori muttered, his eyes widening. Nezu was about to speak, only to frown when he saw there was no connection to Aizawa, 13, or Bamixima's teaching tablets, nor could he directly contact the android herself. Once is bad luck, twice is happenstance, 3 times is enemy action, and 4 is a pressing matter. 𝐁𝐦 stood up, sending out a priority alert to the teachers. This is Principal 𝐁𝐦. I need all available faculty members to report to the bus storage facility. We have reason to believe our students are in danger. Principal 𝐸 began. Go, save your students, 𝐁𝐦 said with calm but fierce acceptance. Is this really wise? I saw the news. All Might has used up most of his allotted time for the day. I calculate that he won't be able to hold his massive form for more than a few minutes, and that's if he doesn't do anything serious. 𝐓𝐴 muttered as the man left, inflating to his massive size with visible effort. 𝐓𝐴, right now there is an attack on UAS teachers and students, one of whom is the boy 𝐻𝐸 has grown to care for personally. 𝐁𝐦 looked at his phone, unshaken faith radiating even through the small device to the AI. Minutes are all he'll need. The villains fled into the alleyway, chased by something they had never thought would happen. It had started out so easy. The group heard screams of terror and immediately they all converged to the source, a collapsed office building. The 2 brats they had been fighting stumbled out, the electric kid grabbing his bleeding arm, blood leaking down his face as he looked at the villains desperately. Please, help us, the earlobe girl begged, dirt and tears covering her face. You gotta get us out of here, the electric boy added, gagging and coughing. Save you. You know we're villains, right? A woman with kangaroo-like legs and tail sneered, rubbing her nose. We're here to kill brats like you. Please, something's happening. Some kind of villain with some kind of biology-altering quirk. And the electric kid's speech suddenly stopped, a red foam pouring out of his mouth, his skin turning a sickly gray, and his eyes a sickly shade of white. 𝐻𝐸𝐬. The fuck's up with the long-legged man's words were cut off when the boy tackled Gyro, who screamed and struggled against her classmate. You assholes, save 𝐴𝐺H. The ear girl's words cut off into a wet scream, the undead electric boy biting into her neck, blood spraying everywhere. Before any of the villains could speak, a series of snarls and groans caught their attention. A massive crowd, drawn by the noise and made from a mix of the students and villains that Handguy had brought. But all of them had white eyes, gray skin, and missing chunks of flesh. The group, zombies the villains realized in horror, shuffled forward. A few broke off, swarming the earlobe girl, and a wet, tearing sound gave the villains all they needed to hear before they took off, followed by more zombies. Fucking zombies, Bullman shouted, panting. This can't be real, this can't be real, the paced villain muttered, rubbing his irritated nose. The long-legged villain, unfortunately, found himself tripping and falling. Before he could get up, he was tackled by the zombies, his body pinned down. They didn't even hear his scream when the sounds of tearing and crunching filled the air, compelling the 5 to run faster. Unfortunately, they quickly found themselves surrounded, several of their fellow villains and thugs, now shuffling zombies, approaching from the other end, leaving the only available spot to hide being an alley that turned out to be a dead end. Nuts to this, I'm out, the fly villain muttered, taking off to the air. Get back here, you cowardly bug. The woman with squid arms shouted to him as the zombies swarmed the remaining 4. The fly looked down, horrified at the sight straight out of a Zack Snyder film, when a voice cut through the growls. Indiscriminate shock. 2 million volts. A loud zap of electricity erupted from the alleyway, blinding the fly heteromorph. Before his vision could readjust, he heard a muffled gunshot and found himself pinned to the alley wall by a massive web. I seriously can't believe that worked. The fly man looked down, his jaw dropping as the horde of zombies, now still as statues, vanished in a cloud of pixels, the only 2 remaining being the electric kid and the earlobe girl, both of them covered in blood but unharmed. Nearby, the villains he had been assigned to laid on the ground, twitching in pain. So confused and angry, the fly villain could only shout, "What the fuck?" Put simply, you were played, Bugman. The fly looked up, and hovering down was a young man in a scaly green suit with gold armor, a purple cape, and a silvery blue dome helmet. He turned toward 𝐀𝐦, his voice cheerful, as if he wasn't standing before a pissed-off villain who had been trying to kill his classmates a short while ago. How'd your live performance debut work out? It was awesome, 𝐀𝐦 said, his mouth stained red. That blood foam capsule thing worked like a charm. And when the holograms popped up, I slipped over here without issue. Yeah, the bite pack was neat, too, Jiraiya admitted, peeling off a hidden fluid sprayer attached to her neck and mouth. It was actually almost fun. What was that sound effect, though? The one where I was being bitten. Just celery being twisted combined with bell peppers getting crushed, with an overlay of wet gravel being grinded in my hands. Oh, and the bloodier noises were actually just wet grapefruits being squished, Midoriya explained, smirking through his now clear helmet. I spend like 2 hours a day just breaking, tapping, scrapping, hitting, and squishing stuff to make the sound effects I need. It's tedious, but necessary, 𝐀𝐦 snorted in laughter. Dude, you use celery to make some villains wet themselves. That's awesome. Wait, what about the zombies? Jiraiya asked, securing the villains with some cable ties. How'd you make so many, and so quickly? My drones scan everyone they meet so I can create holograms of them, and I have a program that can alter them as needed, Midoriya explained, demonstrating with a hologram of himself that he turned into a zombie, a punk rocker with a mohawk, a cyborg, a Spider-Man variant, a goblin, an old man, an anthro rabbit with green fur, a blue-skilled alien, a young woman, and a demon. That being said, it doesn't really work as well without the suggestibility gas to nullify the uncanny valley effect, and it's less effective the closer they get to someone, which is why I put the makeup on you. I don't know what that is. Wait, why'd you bring a makeup kit to a class on rescue missions? Kaminari asked, wiping the fake blood off his face and arm with a wet wipe. Before Midoriya could speak, he was interrupted by an indignant "Let me out of here, you little shits." Midoriya looked up at the wall, dismissing the hologram. Right, you. Midoriya floated up and over to the trapped villain, Kaminari and Jiraiya joining him on a nearby fire escape. Listen, Stockman, we just want to know who your leaders are and what they're planning. I ain't saying nothing, punk. The villain spat on his helmet, the glob sizzling lightly without damage. Midoriya blinked, a cloth hanky appearing in his hand as he calmly wiped away the villain's goop. With a calm, serious expression, Midoriya's helmet turned opaque once again as he spoke gravely. Then you leave me no choice. Midoriya made a series of twitches and gestures with his left hand, raising it up to the fly heteromorph, the eye on the palm lighting up in purple and green. You're not gonna hurt me. You're a hero. The fly muttered, but he didn't seem so sure. Mysterio, Jiraiya said, her tone concerned. Midoriya said nothing, but twitched his hand, and a small puff of mist sprayed out, inciting the fly villain to start coughing and hacking. Jiraiya was about to protest when she caught the scent of the mist. Peppermint. It's a strong smell that I use to hide myself from people with heightened senses, and it just so happens that flies hate the stuff. It won't hurt him, but he'll feel miserable. Midoriya calmly explained. Now, are you going to talk? It'll take cough, hack, more than that get me to talk. The fly muttered between bouts of coughing. That punk, cough, with the hands is scarier cough than you. Midoriya calmly sprayed more peppermint oil into the fly heteromorph's face, making him cough and hack. I made a believable zombie apocalypse happen with only 5 minutes of prep time and you idiots searching for us. Midoriya calmly typed a new command into his gauntlet, keeping the glowing eye in the villain's view. I can get scarier if I have to. I can even make you see what you fear the most. I cough. Seriously doubt the fly man's speech was interrupted by the Mysterio helmet bursting apart. Bits of glass falling to the ground. Growing out of the now limp costume was a massive Venus flytrap monster with a dripping maw. Behind the student, Kaminari and Jiraiya had also morphed into plant monsters, a yellow trumpet and a 𝐀𝐦 respectively. Hungrily slithering over to the flytrap, the Midoriya plant monster reared back, its jaws wide open, corpses of other insects and humans within the void of its mouth, and lunged forward. We're here to kill All Might. The fly man cried out, the massive plant monster stopping just short of chomping down. What do you mean? The flytrap monster asked in Midoriya's voice, moving back only by a meter. That guy with the hands, Shigaraki. He's got some plan to kill the symbol of peace. He spread a ton of cash around and hired a bunch of us to act as muscle. The fly man elaborated, visibly sweating. He was certain it was an illusion, but every time he looked at the plant monsters, he couldn't help but get a feeling of fear. The primal one that had stuck with him ever since he had watched Jumanji in his youth. But All Might's the toughest hero around. How's a bunch of dumb thugs supposed to take him out? The pale pitcher plant asked in the electric boy's voice. That muscly guy he's with, Namu. He kept bragging about it being mini-maxed or some shit to handle All Might. The fly explained. The guy kept using video game terms, so I didn't really get what he was saying beyond that. What about the other two with him? The Sundu monster spoke in the girl's voice, two barbed vines slithering over and pointing at the fly threateningly. The portal guy and the blood guy. I don't know. I hadn't seen them before I met Shigaraki. I just know that they go by Kurogiri and Blood Spider. The fly explained. You don't know anything else? Midoriya asked. Another plant monster, this one looking like a demonic red spider lily, slithering towards the fly man, sap dripping like drool from its teeth like stamen. The fly racked his brain for anything that might have been helpful. No, just, oh wait, that Namu thing. He said it was engineered somehow. Gamma radiation and extra quirks and crap. What about the quirks of your comrades? The female plant monster asked. I'll tell you what I know. Achako dodged the blades thrown by the villains. For 5 minutes she'd been in the mountain zone, and from the moment she arrived she had encountered peril and danger. Thankfully she wasn't alone, but since it was Mineta with her, she wasn't too sure about how she felt. This sucks. I'm with one of our class beauties and I can't enjoy it. The boy whined, throwing his balls at a mole-like villain that popped out of the ground a short distance away. The cluster hit the man in the face and sent him down, immobilized. I'm starting to wonder if you even want to be a hero, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 muttered, lobbing a boulder at the villain that tried to attack with blades. The boulder shattered on impact and knocked him out, but there was still a good number of the thugs around. Of course I do, but I don't want to fight bad guys this soon. Only a crazy person would want to fight villains a few weeks into hero school. 𝐴𝐸 shot back. In the fire hazard zone, Deku sneezed. You okay, Baku bro? Kirishima asked his classmate, throwing aside a man with molten yellow skin. Course I'm fine. Deku shot back, taking out a chameleon-like villain who tried to sneak attack him. If all it took was a sneeze to weaken me, then I would have no place as a hero. So don't even insinuate that I'm that weak. Got it, shitty hair. So manly. Kirishima smiled, his sharp teeth a manic grin. Hell yeah, man. Heroes need to be tough and able to overcome any obstacles that get in their way. Yeah, I just said that, dumbass. Deku muttered flatly, but Kirishima just laughed. I think that's the last of them. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 muttered, panting heavily. Her stomach felt like it was a balloon animal, but the villains around them had all fallen, either immobilized or knocked out by thrown objects. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 was really glad Midoriya had suggested adding ginger pills to her costume's storage pieces, since they helped with the feeling in her stomach. Before she could suggest they try to find their way back to the plaza, the ground exploded behind her, and a man wearing a skull-shaped helmet popped out and grabbed her arm. Try anything and the girl fries, runt. The villain, 𝗬𝗧, spat at 𝐸𝐸, his other hand sparking with electricity. Let go of me. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 tried to grab him, but a zap from his hands sent her to her knees. Not that the weight impaired the villain much. It'd be so easy to kill you all, but in case things go south, it's good to have some insurance. The villain sneered, looking at the diminutive boy. Course, I only need one hostage, so if either of you try anything again. The man was interrupted by a large rock hitting him in the back of his head. The rock, which seemed to have been hovering, was raised again, but a blast from 𝗬𝗧's hands shot out and hit the invisible girl carrying it, the light warping around her for a brief moment. Toru, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 tried to get up, but her muscles were still spasming from the electricity. Oh, you're dead. 𝗬𝗧's insult was cut off by a smaller rock beating him on the head. Eat my balls, you fuck. 𝐸𝐸 ran forward, clutching a circle made of his balls like a shield, his forehead leaking blood into his eyes. Whether that was the cause of his tears, or just the situation in general, 𝐸𝐸 was crying hard as he ran forward. The villain shot out a stream of electricity, but the orbs, rubbery by nature, protected the diminutive boy, who tackled the man's shield first. Go to hell, you sick bastard, and rot there, you sick fuck. 𝐸𝐸 was ripping off his balls and pressing them all over the villain's body, his arms, his helmet, doing everything to keep him from moving. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, 𝐸𝐸. He's down. Toru grabbed the boy's arm. Dang, I didn't think you had it in you. He's a villain. I couldn't hold back. 𝐸𝐸, panting and sobbing, looked up at Toru. And you couldn't have appeared sooner when all those villains were attacking us. I don't have any combat experience. I was going to be an underground hero. The invisible girl shot back. Thankfully, her outfit was apparently lined with something like rubber that protected her from the worst of the electricity. Unfortunately, her costume now had a burn mark that rendered her suit partially visible. Guys, enough. 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 shakily stood up, her hands still twitching, but her face said, we need to get back to the plaza and see if we can get help. But first, remove that guy's helmet. 𝐸𝐸 looked at her like she was crazy, but Toru had no such objections and obeyed. Before the villain could do more than open his mouth, 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 stomped on his face, knocking him out. Okay, let's go. Why are there so many scary people in my class? 𝐸𝐸 whimpered, following behind them. At the exit to the mountain zone, a beep caught their attention. Hovering over, one of Midoriya's scenery drones decloaked. Oh great, now Midoriya's going to kill us. He does not intend to, nor will I. A calm, American-accented voice spoke through the drone. Who are you? Toru asked, but 𝐻𝐡𝐬𝐬 stepped forward. You're Tsuburaya, Midoriya's trainer? Yes, that is correct. And I've come here to gather you all to the exit. Save for you, Miss Uraraka. Midoriya needs your help with something. 3 minutes prior, Midoriya left the alleyway with his classmates. The hypnosis glove had worked like a charm, and the suggestibility gas enhanced the effects of the hologram. He wasn't sure if the fly man would have reacted to the sight of carnivorous plants, but his gamble had thankfully paid off. Once he had gotten what he wanted from the fly man, he sprayed him with knockout gas and used his webnet gun to secure the other villains. Okay, so this Shigaraki guy has disintegration powers and speaks in gaming terminology. The Namu is super strong and can tank hits. Kurogiri has to know the GPS location to open a portal at a spot. And Blood Spider, I can't believe that guy insists on an underscore in his name. Kaminari interrupted. Tell me about it. Jiraiya muttered, before pointing ahead. Oh, Midoriya, what do you want to do about that guy? Spotting the knocked-out long-legged man, pinned down by a massive web, Midoriya approached him with some extra strong cable ties. Quickly binding him, he turned to speak with his classmates. But then his suit flashed a notification to him. Checking it, Midoriya couldn't help but let out a whoop of joy. his helmet even turning clear to show his joy. "What? Are we saved?" Kaminari asked. "Not yet, but whatever's been jamming the signals is gone, and a friend's contacted me." Midoriya immediately responded, putting the suit on speaker. "Midoriya, there you are. What's going on?" Subaru's voice was panicked, a surprise for the usually stoic AI. "Subaru, call for help. Villains have infiltrated the USJ. 𝐍𝐸 is fending off most of them, but one of them had a warp quirk and he separated me from most of my class." Midoriya hurriedly explained. "I don't know where most of them are. All Might is still about 5 minutes away, but the other teachers are on their way now," Subaru assured the trio, who allowed a sigh of relief to escape, at least until Midoriya remembered what the fly villain had told him. "Wait, Subaru, you've got to stop All Might. The villains have some kind of monster made to kill All Might. I'm sending over the information I've gathered now," Midoriya quickly explained, typing in the command. "That's not good. But shoot, the man left his phone behind, so I can't call him, and I doubt he'd stop until he got there." Subaru muttered, analyzing the data. "You'll have to stop this monster on your own somehow." "What?" Kaminari yelped. "If that thing was made to kill All Might, what good are we going to do?" "Yeah, let the teachers handle this," Jiraiya chimed in. Midoriya was about to agree with them, but then a thought struck him. They don't know about All Might's limit. If he comes here, pushing himself, that could have devastating long-term effects on his quirk and body. "I need to stop the Namu before All Might shows up, but what can I do to convince them?" Midoriya quietly mused, before getting an idea. "Guys, if there's one thing I've learned from training as Mysterio's successor, it's that brawn is not everything. If it's made to fight All Might, that means it's most likely been specialized to deal with someone like him, but not people who fight differently from All Might. That's not going to help much if it crushes us before we can take it out," Jiraiya pointed out. "He's not going to crush us because you two are going to hang back," Midoriya explained. "I'll handle the Namu, but I need you guys to remove any students or teachers that have passed out just in case." "Are you insane? That thing will crush you." Kaminari looked at Midoriya like he was crazy. "He can't crush me if he can't see me," Midoriya reminded him. "Look, every minute we spend arguing is another chance for our classmates to die. We need to at least buy enough time for help to get here. We're here to be superheroes, right? Well, the only difference between a superhero and a normal hero is just how far they're willing to go to face down unfair odds, and I'm going to fight, with or without you." Jiraiya and Kaminari looked at the boy before them. When they first laid eyes on him, they thought he was just a quiet, odd boy with a habit for quiet muttering and a fondness for drones. The battle trial showed that he was a devious, creative young man with a showman streak and a willingness to play dirty, even when he claimed that he wanted to be a hero. But now they saw a fiery passion in his eyes, a glare that showed he was completely serious about being a hero. And what's more, he believed that he could pull it off. No, that he knew that he could do it. It was so strong that, for a moment, they also believed it. "Okay, what's the plan?" Jiraiya asked. "First, we're going to need some help from our classmates, especially you, Gyro." 𝐬𝐸 dashed towards the portal user, Kurogiri, he had called himself, her energy katana slashing the air in front of her with a distinct hum. The villain dodged, opening up another portal for the blade to go through so it would damage its wielder. But 𝐬𝐸 knew better than that and shut off the blade the moment she perceived the portal appearing. She turned towards the villain, flames spewing from the monster face on her torso. The portal villain warped away before he could be hurt, but was visibly annoyed. "So you live up to your lineage, robot," Kurogiri muttered. "I am an android," 𝐬𝐸 retorted, the nanites surrounding her hand extending out into several tendrils that shot forward. Even when Kurogiri tried to redirect it, the nanites simply went around the portal and jabbed him in the neck brace. The villain screamed in pain, the attack dazing him for a moment. 13 took this chance to step in, the caps on her fingers opening up to suck the villain in, retracting her nanites and letting her systems cool down from the unending assault. The android hero looked down at the plaza, where her friend and co-worker was still fighting the horde of villains. Many of the villains had already been taken out, but 𝐬𝐸 was still worried, because 𝐍𝐸 was starting to tire out. She could tell even from the top of the stairs. The time between each one of 𝐍𝐸's quirks was shortened. At first it had been by mere quarter seconds, but then it became half seconds, full seconds, 3 seconds. Then all of a sudden, the villain beside the man covered in hands moved forward, tendrils of blood emerging from the suit. 𝐍𝐸 turned to glare, but a spray of blood to the eyes blinded the pro-hero, and the tendrils dug into 𝐍𝐸's chest before growing bigger and retracting. 𝐬𝐸 wanted to help, but the momentary distraction allowed Kurogiri to damage 13 with her own quirk. She wanted more than anything to help 𝐍𝐸, but she couldn't leave her students alone with this villain either. Down below, Blood Spider used his tendrils to lift 𝐍𝐸 off the ground, the man pale and tired looking from the sudden blood loss. "Mind if I kill this guy?" Blood Spider turned to Shigaraki. "I could use more ammo." "Go ahead. That scarf would make for some great loot, if the rumors about it are true." Shigaraki said with a smirk. Shatter. But before Aizawa could go to the great cat cafe in the sky, the glass ceiling burst open, and from it, a massive figure leaped down, laughing. "Have no fear, students, for I am here," shouted All Might, wearing his teacher's uniform, a massive smile on his face. "It's about time," Blood Spider muttered, dropping the Class 1 homeroom teacher, who fell to the ground with a grunt. Shigaraki laughed. Finally the raid boss appears. Namu, kill All Might. The Namu, to say it dashed forward would have been too slow. It was closer to teleportation with how fast it appeared and punched All Might. The hero was sent backwards, but recovered enough to get his bearings and unleash a volley of punches. Shigaraki wasn't concerned, however. In fact, he felt quite cocky. "Don't bother trying to fight, symbol of peace." The young man spat out the title like it was an insult. "Namu has been min-maxed specifically to deal with you, and his creator even got some DLC installed just to be even tougher. So what? I won't let this villain bring harm to my students, even if you maxed out its stats," All Might proclaimed, dashing forward and socking the monster in the jaw, who barely reacted. "What? My punch did nothing." "Of course not. Namu has shock absorption," Shigaraki bragged. All Might ran forward, landing blow after blow upon the monster, who barely reacted to them. The monster returned the hits, but All Might, the mountain of a man, didn't even flinch in response and kept moving around, not staying in one place for more than a second. One blow did manage to knock the monster's leg out of place and twisted it almost backwards, sending it to its knees. But that leg quickly snapped back into place. "How? I thought you said that its quirk was shock absorption?" All Might shouted, aghast at the sight. "I did. But who said that was its only quirk?" Shigaraki laughed, spreading its arms out. "It's the bioengineered anti-symbol of peace, made solely to kill you. And it's also got super regeneration, so even if you could damage it, it'll just heal right back up in an instant. Nothing you can do can harm it. Even your strongest blows aren't enough to stagger it." Blood Spider laughed. Things were going just like his friend had predicted. All Might was fighting the Namu. The heroes were down, the students were spread out among the villains in waiting, and their hypocritical, favoritism-spewing school was going to suffer dearly for weight. Blood Spider's eyes narrowed. All Might was moving fast, kicking up dust. But something was off. The way the dust moved, it looked off. It wasn't sticking to the symbol of peace, but why? Blood Spider gathered a ball of blood in his hand and, with a swipe, threw it towards the two giants fighting. The blood splattered harmlessly on Namu, but it passed right through All Might like he wasn't there. Instead it splattered onto something, or rather someone, invisible. "Oh crap," the fake All Might muttered. "The fuck is this?" Shigaraki yelled. "Namu, clear the air." Obediently, the monster smacked its hands together. The dust around them shot out, coating several hovering drones, hidden by holograms like the one from the fake All Might, who promptly vanished in a cloud of pixels. At the same time, the invisible person appeared in a cloud of smoke, and, "You had got to be fucking kidding. Who the fuck is this griefing hacker?" Shigaraki screamed in anger, scratching at his neck. "Whoever they are, they've got a fetish for Mysterio," Blood Spider muttered, Shigaraki looking over incredulously. "Wait, that nobody American villain who attacked Tokyo? And someone in the hero course is using their costume." Shigaraki almost laughed, but the sheer idea of it made him want to gag. Like when a game remake locked content the original had behind a paywall, or added loot boxes. "Well, it seems my farce has indeed been uncovered." The hero student suddenly spoke up, before he bowed low in a flamboyant manner, his drones hovering over to join him. "I am indeed Mysterio, and I intend to redeem the name from that of a vile villain to that of a hero who heralds hope. But for now I'll settle with clearing out some low-tier villains from my school." "Low tier," Shigaraki snarled, turning back to the student. "No one else has broken into USJ. No one else managed a successful stealth mission to get info about the teaching schedule for All Might." Mysterio simply shrugged. "Perhaps, and yet, All Might chose not to show up. I suppose he had something more important to do than play with a noob manchild and his one decent unit." Shigaraki screamed in anger. "Then let's raise my level by killing a few what?" Blood Spider followed Shigaraki's gaze. Behind them, the area had been cleared of villains and heroes. Even Aizawa, who had been little more than a meter away from the blood user, was gone. "Oh dear, it looks like the NPC's loot table has a limited time for collection before expiring." "Oh well," Mysterio said with a shrug. "NOMU, kill that MODDER," Shigaraki screamed. Namu immediately charged forward, punching Mysterio in his stupid helmet, but the figure shattered like glass, and the cracks spread far beyond the fake villain, spreading past Namu, cutting him off from the two villains. The cracks continued to surround the two, the chunks of air falling out of place like shards of glass, revealing a dark void filled with purple smoke behind it, the ground now platform suspended over nothing. "What the fuck is this?" Blood Spider didn't respond, instead just gathering blood around his hands and back to form claws. "This is my world." Mysterio rose up from the void. easily twice the size of Mount Lady at full height, hovering atop a cloud of green smoke. And here, I'm in God mode. It's just an illusion, Tamura-kun. His powers are about as dangerous as a cartoon. Blood Spider tried to assure his friend, but a massive fist appeared from a runic circle and punched him to the ground. The fist vanished into green smoke, but the impact had been real and had driven the blood manipulator to the ground. Shaking, Blood Spider rose, supported by 4 tentacles of blood sprouting from his back. Tell me, little spider, did that feel like a cartoon? The giant Mysterio growled. Smoke rose up from his feet and formed new figures. Several smaller copies of Mysterio stepped forward, some wielding laser pistols, others had scimitars, and some were creating circles with arcane runes within them. Not far away from the villains, Midoriya, wearing only the sleeper hit, took several deep breaths. He was glad that he had sent out the blockbuster on its own with Midoriya piloting it, in case his hastily crafted illusion was found out. It had only taken 4 minutes for that, but Midoriya was still able to glean plenty of information from the battle with Namo. For example, he had already obtained a copy of Shigaraki's voice and added it to his mimicry program to try and take control of the Namo. However, it seemed that whoever made it considered this a possibility, and the Namo had ignored his words. Midoriya wasn't sure how it knew he was a fake, but either way, that left the simplest option unavailable to him. Another one was that, unless it interfered with an order, the Namo was content to ignore anything that hit it. While sending the All Might illusion after it, he had commanded his drones to attack with lightning, lasers, air cannons, and even ramming themselves, which temporarily took out a leg. But the monster gave no indication that it felt anything, just staring ahead with its blank, unseeing eyes. Problematic. But it also meant that Midoriya could set up for his plan without interference from the Namo. However, he wasn't focused on that at the moment, but rather, some words his classmate had said only a short while ago. If my quirk's too spread out, it won't do any real damage. When Kaminari had said it, he was referring to his own power being used externally. But, as he was applying the fake wounds to the Electric Boy and Jiraiya, Midoriya realized that the same philosophy could apply to his own quirk, though he had to use a different analogy to help with visualizing it. Imagine the taiyaki spread out evenly in the microwave. Midoriya thought to himself like a mantra. It was a strange sensation, trying to call up little more than 5% of his power, but by letting it flow constantly throughout his body all at once. He felt the power stabilizing within himself without damage. He opened his eyes, now glowing bright behind his goggles. Green lightning flashed across his body without harming his electronics or costume. The sensation. It felt like he was covered in a cloak and a cowl, so it only made sense to give it one name. One for all, full cowling. Midoriya wanted to run forward, enact the next part of his plan immediately, but instead he moved slowly, carefully. Despite the ongoing crisis, he couldn't move fast, not yet. This power just appeared. And Midoriya couldn't risk hurting himself, not at this point. Oh my. Midoriya looked over. Nearby, Jiraiya stood with Ochako and Momo, the latter staring at the lightning emanating from his form in awe. I had a revelation about my power, Midoriya said simply. With it, and your guys' help, we can make things easier for the heroes when they arrive. Jiraiya said that thing was made to kill All Might, though. Momo muttered, nervous, which is exactly why we need to take it out of play. Midoriya said firmly, but gently. I'm under no impression that we can kill it, but maybe we can get rid of it. What do you need? Jiraiya asked, adjusting her gauntlets to their highest settings. First, Momo, I'm going to need a lot more web formula, Midoriya said, pulling out his webnet gun and handing her the casings for the ammo. And you'll need your own gun. Things weren't going well for 𝐵𝐸𝐸𝐸. In fairness, she wasn't specialized for combat, but rather rescue and disaster, so a prolonged battle like this was going to wear her down fast no matter what. At least now her backup drive was reconnected, and she could tell that the pro heroes were on their way, but it was going to take time for them to get here. Not helping matters was that the portal villain wasn't afraid to attack the students to distract her, as Zero found out while trying to patch up 13's costume with his tape. Sato was able to keep him safe, thankfully, but it showed that the android heroine couldn't let up in her attack even once. However, the one comfort she could take away from this was that even if she was wearing down, the portal villain was unable to aid the villains. She had initially been ecstatic upon hearing All Might's booming voice, but a quick scan told her that it was just a swarm of combat drones and that Midoriya was trying to fight the villains on his own. If she wasn't angry at how reckless it was, she would have been in awe of his bravery. As it was, she decided to at least make things easier for him by keeping Kurogiri away from the leader. Shoji and Sato had taken to trying to pry the doors open for the students to escape through, and they were close to succeeding. But a single slip-up in her attention sent her torso first into a portal, which Kurogiri immediately cut off with a loud crunch. 𝐴YMAXIMA-sama. Tenya screamed as her legs fell to the ground. 𝐵𝐸𝐸𝐸's top half fell to the ground nearby, sparks, nanobots, and oil spilling out of her torso. I am alive, she stuttered out, her systems glitching, before her body fell limp. No, sensei, 𝐀𝐦 shouted, sobbing. Finally, 𝐬𝐸 focused on the students, ready to warp them away to the rest of the villains in waiting. Directed shock. 2 million volts. 𝐬𝐸 spun around in time to see a massive bolt of electricity hit him in the neck brace, sending him to the ground, a good chunk of his smoke-covered form vanishing as a result. Before he could get up, he was pinned down by the muscular boy, 𝐷𝗀𝗏, who grabbed some tape from his classmate and started binding the warp villain's hands together. Close by, 𝐀𝐦 appeared, resetting his costume's circuit breaker, walking beside a drone shaped like an upside-down eye of Providence and a hovering burn mark carrying a racer head. Toru, 𝐀𝐦, thank God. Where are the others? Zero asked from beside 13, his classmate 𝐀𝐦 standing by 𝐵𝐸𝐸 upper torso protectively. Shoji took 𝐈𝐲 off Toru's hands, supporting their passed-out teacher with several extra limbs and carefully laying him beside 13. Midoriya, Jiraiya, and I were in the urban ruins zone, and I encountered Tsu and Momo leaving the water rescue. Ochako, Mayuta, and Toru were leaving the mountainous regions. 𝐀𝐦 paused and took out a small tablet marked with Mysterio's eye, tapping it before continuing. According to Midoriya's drones, Bakugo and Kirishima are in the fire zone having the time of their life. Mina and Tokoyami are in the downpour zone. Oof, that's gotta hurt. But they're fine, though I think Tokoyami's in a bad mood. And Todoroki is, pretty much handling the entirety of the landslide zone by himself. But Ojiro and Koda are near him, unharmed. He finished up, much to the relief of the group. What about Aoyama? Shoji asked, prompting 𝐀𝐦 to check. But it took him several seconds to locate him. He's hiding out in the ruins, 𝐀𝐦 muttered. Poor guy's probably scared out of his mind. Hold on, why haven't Midoriya, Gyro, Momo, and Ochako joined us up here? 𝐀𝐦 asked. We need to all escape from here and alert the teachers. No worries, they're already aware and on their way. Tsuburaya spoke up from the drone beside 𝐀𝐦. So you're Ingenium's younger brother. I hope he likes those zero-friction soles I designed for him. Who is this? 𝐀𝐦 asked, chopping his arms and glaring at the drone in suspicion. My God, Midoriya wasn't exaggerating about how stiff you were. Tsuburaya muttered. I'm Tsuburaya, Izuku Midoriya's mentor, and I'm here to help. Hovering over to the door, a thick laser shot out of the drone's pupil, slowly melting through the door's locks. The heroes are on their way. But in the meantime, I imagine you'd all prefer to get to safety. Oh, and don't worry about 𝐵𝐸𝐸. The jamming signal is gone, so she's reconnected to her backup drive and waiting to undergo transference to a new body. But our classmates 𝐀𝐦 protested. They'll be fine. I'm keeping an eye on them and making sure the villains don't hurt them. Tsuburaya calmly interrupted. Midoriya has a plan to weaken the head villains, so right now wait, grab the portal user. Sato turned to the villain he had been guarding, but it was too late. He had vanished into a portal, the tape binding him cut with a shard of metal obtained from his fight with 𝐵𝐸𝐸. Shigaraki was about ready to rage quit. It seemed like there was no end to the waves of bots being summoned by that surprise boss. Every time he disintegrated one, two more would appear, and sometimes they weren't even real. A decoy so that a camper could strike a blow. Of course, he and Blood Spider were more than sure that they were just in an illusion, not actually suspended over a void, so naturally they tried leaving. But every single time they approached the edge of the platform, that hack spammer's massive hand would appear to backhand them back inside. It was like an invisible wall, but more mocking. It was clear this griefer was just kiting for this team, but that didn't make it any less annoying. He would have been scratching at his neck, but it was already red and raw, too close to bleeding from the day's annoyances. He's tried calling for the Namu repeatedly, but for some reason his tank wasn't accepting his summons. Thankfully, a different party member showed up. Tamura Shigaraki, I apologize for the delay. Hirajiri formed beside them, but Shigaraki wasn't in the mood to hear his apology. Finally, just get us out of this stupid illusion. Hearing his friend, Blood Spider, swaying slightly, ran over and leaped through the portal, Tamura beside him. They emerged right outside a pixelated dome, surrounded by drones shaped like upside-down pyramids with eyes on them, which was evidently the source of the illusions. Tamura wasn't focused on that, but rather the small party of hero students attacking his Namu. A girl in a red outfit was firing a riot gun that shot what looked like webs all over Namu's body, cocooning it, and reloading with more ammo that formed from her body. On the other side, a girl with elongated earlobes was pummeling the Namu with concentrated sound blasts from her gauntlets, aided by several more drones. He didn't see why she was bothering, since shock absorption would nullify it, but the fact that she even tried was an insult to him. Behind the girl was him. Shigaraki looked over. He was surprised at the sheer venom in his friend's voice. Whoever that green-haired boy was, Blood Spider hated him. Without another word, the blood controller ran forward, claws out. The green-haired boy looked over, gasped, and fell to the ground like a Matrix character. 𝐷𝗫𝗀 flew past him, but upon landing, he stood right back up. The earphone girl looked over with concern, but the green boy shouted to her, "No, keep going." That voice, why'd it sound familiar? "𝗂𝐬 free 𝗲𝗻." Shigaraki ran forward, but found himself knocked down. Before them, a swarm of drones decloaked, and Mysterio reappeared. "Midoriya, over here." A new voice, American accented, spoke from the suit, flying over to the green-haired boy, who must have been Midoriya. While more drones kept 𝐷𝗀𝗀 busy, Midoriya pulled off the suit's helmet and weight. Where was that griefing fucker with the hacks? Midoriya, without stopping, quickly climbed into the suit, pulling it over like it was a set of one-piece pajamas, snapping the helmet back into place. "Oh, that motherfucker. You don't deserve to be here." 𝐷𝗀𝗀 screeched, slashing at the faux supervillain, who deflected the blow with a swipe of his arm, and punched him in the gut, sending Shigaraki's friend flying back by nearly a dozen meters. If it hadn't been for the cushion of blood on his torso, it might have been 5 times that distance. "Ooh, that is so much better, Midoriya." "No," Mysterio sighed in relief. He turned back to the villains. "Ready for the real boss fight, noob? Forget killing the symbol of peace. Shigaraki would be satisfied if he just killed this cocky griefer. Namu, tear his limbs off, but keep him alive so that I can kill him," he shouted, scratching at his neck. Namu, finally close enough to hear his commands, roared and shifted within its cocoon. Whatever those webs were made of was strong. Stronger than steel cable, but slowly, surely, Namu shifted forward. The girl in red, panting tiredly, fell to her knees, her riot gun supporting her. She looked thinner than a few minutes ago, and it looked as though she was finally out of ammunition. "Midoriya, I don't think those webs are gonna hold much longer," the earlobe girl shouted, her arms shaking in fear even as she continued doing scratch damage against the party's tank. "That's fine. I think I can handle the rest," the boy shouted. "Handle what?" Namu was unstoppable. "Keep 𝗂𝐬 from interfering." The girl nodded and turned to 𝗂𝐬, shooting sound waves at him alongside the drones already griefing the portal creator. Namu finally managed to break free, charging at Mysterio, who wasn't fast enough and was punched in the face. The web slowed its arm down enough that the blow wasn't lethal, but it did shatter part of the helmet, his green hair sticking out of the hole created. Undeterred by the battle damage, Mysterio threw himself forward, lightning forming around his body. He threw blow after blow against Namu, each one not doing anything. At first, but very quickly, Namu started reacting to each blow, until it was actually stumbling back. "How?" 𝐷𝗀𝗀, weak from blood loss, gasped from his spot. Without relenting, Mysterio responded. "You said his power was shock absorption, not nullification," meaning that all it took was enough repeated impacts to overload Namu's power, leaving him open to my real plan. "Now you are aka." From above, hanging from a drone that had cloaked itself and its passenger, a girl in a pink and black suit smacked the brain of Namu. Without wasting a second, the drone pulled her away while Mysterio ran forward, grabbing Shigaraki's tank, his MVP, by its ankle and flipped him onto the ground as if it was made of cardboard. But he wasn't done. No, next he chose to use a super move, spinning himself around, dragging Namu along the ground, lightning shooting off his body. Shigaraki ran forward, trying to stop the cheater, but another drone blasted him back, and he could only watch helplessly as Mysterio sped up until, when the two of them were a blur, Mysterio belted one final one-liner before releasing Namu. "Namu, consider yourself banned from the server." Namu flew through the air, out the top of the dome and out of sight in mere moments. Mysterio stood there, swaying from the spinning and panting heavily, sweat clinging to his hair, visible through the broken helmet. Shigaraki just stared, his legs close to giving out beneath him. It was impossible. It wasn't fair. He maxed out Namu's stats to take on the symbol of peace, a man who could leap tall buildings in a single bound and defeat any foe with one punch. How could a nobody hero student, wearing the costume of an ancient quirkless D-lister loser, defeat his Namu? You, Shigaraki screamed, incapable of clear thought, instead charging with his arm outstretched towards the boy, who turned, ready to face the oncoming threat. Before he could grab a hold of him, the doors to the USJ exploded inwards and a gush of wind followed behind it. "Do not be afraid, students, because I am here." That phrase was followed by a sound like a thunderclap, and suddenly All Might, the real one, knocked Shigaraki away with a punch. The man, the super boss he had risked so much for, grinded for so long to kill, was finally here, and he was helpless to face him. "All Might, be careful, he can disintegrate anything through touch." Mysterio warned the symbol of peace like an annoying tutorial guide. The symbol of peace just nodded, glaring at Shigaraki, for once not smiling, but instead scowling in cold fury. But before Shigaraki could attack, or All Might could strike, a cord of red liquid latched onto Shigaraki's shoulder and pulled him back. 𝐷𝗀𝗀, panting and sweating, grabbed his friend and fled towards 𝗂𝐬𝗀, stumbling as he did so. "We're leaving, now." Without protest, the portal user created an exit for the young man, before vanishing himself. The next 10 minutes were a blur for All Might. He wasn't sure what he was going to find when he got to the USJ, but thankfully, the students were largely alright, though understandably shaken. Behind him, he could hear the teachers run in. Each one quickly went to the zones, clearing out the villains who, upon realizing their boss plan had failed, quickly surrendered. Subaraya helped with his drones where he could, administering medical supplies and helping escort the students out. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 bisected body was a startling sight. But she contacted Nezu to assure her students that she was alright in her backup server and was awaiting approval to transfer over to her spare body. All Might could feel himself being drained by keeping his hero form active. But he had to reassure the students, and pushing it a few extra minutes without doing anything strenuous wouldn't hurt too badly. However, watching his successor speak with Detective 𝐲𝐿, he couldn't help but feel conflicted. He was proud that the boy was able to overcome sheer adversity. He had demonstrated bravery, quick thinking, leadership skills, adaptability, and strategic prowess worthy of both of the legacies he had inherited. But that didn't change the fact that he had actively sought out the four most dangerous members of a group of killers for a fight. Even if he thought it was for a good reason, it was a foolish, reckless thing. But All Might couldn't help but feel that, if he was in a similar situation, he would have done the same thing. Thor Almighty, is being a mentor supposed to be this hard? Blood Spider stumbled through the portal into a well-lit bar, dropping his friend on the ground before collapsing into a nearby booth. Kurogiri wasted no time, using his portals to summon several blood packs and a transfer kit for the villain, who jabbed the needle into his wrist, sighing in relief as it flowed through him. I take it things didn't go well. Blood Spider looked at the TV screen. Upon it was no image, only static, but words spoke through it nonetheless. The voice belonged to a man that Shigaraki had only referred to as his sensei. Blood Spider, still exhausted from overusing his power, said nothing, and seeing as Shigaraki was taking out his anger on his third bar stool, Kurogiri chose to spoke up in his stead. Blood Spider performed admirably in the circumstances, and is the reason Tamura Shigaraki is not behind bars, but the mission was a failure. Our forces were arrested, the Namu is gone, and All Might lives, and Namu didn't even get to face him in battle. Shigaraki whined, reaching for his fifth stool. Some nobody with a Mysterio avatar appeared and sent him out of the building, like an admin banning a player. His name's Izuku Midoriya. Shigaraki and Kurogiri looked over at Blood Spider, now looking like he could sit up straight. I once went to the same middle school he did. Alder and Mustafu. You knew that griefer. Shigaraki hissed, only for his friend to shake his head. Not personally. He was a year below me. But he was the only quirkless kid in school, and the school's resident hotshot liked picking on him. You said he was quirkless? Sensei asked, his voice sounding contemplative. Yeah, but now he's got lightning and super strength or something. Although, it might have been one of his illusions, but it felt pretty real. Blood Spider muttered, awfully late for a quirk to appear. A second voice muttered from the TV. The doctor, if he remembered right. Agreed. Sensei sounded, not quite happy, but eager, as if he had finally figured out the answer of a puzzle. Well, I want that Deku destroyed, and I'll do anything to get it done. Blood Spider stood up, ripping off his mask. A quirkless little shit like him shouldn't have gotten into Shinketsu's hero course, let alone the best hero school in the world. The doctor's voice was contemplative, considering. It just so happens that a contact in the States recently offered a batch of DNA samples of some pre-Quirk era heroes. They weren't of much use to us, so I turned it down, but, well, what better way to stop a Mysterio than with a Spider-Man? Excellent idea, Doctor. In the meantime, perhaps our little investment at the school can make himself useful to us and plant a few seeds of discord against the boy, Sensei suggested. And Shigaraki could practically hear the evil smile in his words. At home, Midoriya was looked over by his mom, who was alternating between holding her baby boy in relief and shaking him in rage over his actions. Midoriya was halfway through an explanation of what exactly he had done when Subaraya's house drone activated. Midoriya, turn on the TV to the news, now. Shocked by the urgency in his voice, 𝐀𝐦 grabbed the remote and obeyed. When she saw what was displayed, her anger and worry was replaced by fear, for the news was depicting a picture of Midoriya in his battle-damaged Mysterio outfit being tended to by a paramedic, with his hair poking out, with a caption beneath it, "You a high school encouraging students to be villains." Toshinori was in his apartment, quietly eating his simple dinner, hoping to unwind after the stressful few hours he'd had. Classes had been cancelled for the next few days to allow the students time to recover from the ordeal at the USJ. This event would likely serve as a wake-up call for many of the students who thought being a hero was an easy way to fame and glory, though Toshinori had hoped to wait until the internships had started for the students to encounter villains. Still, many of them appeared alright, though Toshinori would be the first to admit that he sometimes had trouble reading the subtler emotions in the room. That had always been Hound Dog's specialty, and Toshinori knew when to leave things for the professionals, so he had left early for the night to recover his strength. Thankfully, he could feel that he only lost about 10 minutes of his total time. But that was still 10 minutes less than the world needed of All Might. Perhaps he will take up Midoriya's offer of that hologram belt. Oh well, something to think about tomorrow, the pro hero thought as he put his now cleared away plate in the dishwasher. He was about to turn in for the night, maybe with a nice book, when he heard his phone go off. Oddly, the phone that was ringing was his personal cell phone, not the one he used for hero work. Checking the ID, he blinked in surprise. Mirai, why is he calling me at this hour? Toshinori couldn't help but hope that his former sidekick was hoping to mend some bridges. The last time they had talked was when he was telling Mirai about his choice in a successor for One for All, almost 5 months prior. That conversation had, like many others since his injury, dissolved into an argument between the two. Mirai had insisted that he had found the perfect person to take on One for All, a third-year U, a student named Mirio Tagada. A day after meeting Midoriya, Toshinori had met with Tagada in his emaciated form. He could immediately see why his ex-sidekick had picked him. Mirio looked and acted much like All Might was believed to act, kind, selfless, always joking, doing good for its own sake instead of any reward. And even better, his body was already in the perfect state to receive that power, meaning he would have had plenty of time to train him. Toshinori, however, had turned the boy down. Not only because he had promised this power to young Midoriya, but because Midoriya not only had nearly everything Mirio had, but he also possessed something that Mirio and even Toshinori himself had lacked: perspective. Midoriya was a quirkless boy who had been taught by a supervillain. His mind was sharp, and his heart was fearless, if a bit reckless at times. Good traits any hero needed. But his mind gave him the ability to do more than just punch his way out of problems. He was a planner. He could think and read situations far better, and even perhaps talk down his enemies. Sure, the boy needed to go through hell just to be able to contain the power, but already he had been making progress in controlling it, explaining his full cowling the minute he had been able to speak freely. Toshinori was not afraid to admit that he was ashamed for not thinking of such a method when he saw how Midoriya's limbs would break. He was sure that Gran Torino would have kicked him in the face if he had learned about it. But that ultimately proved why Toshinori wanted Midoriya to be the next bearer of his quirk. Put simply, while Mirio would have been a good fit, Midoriya was a better fit. He was even more certain after he met up with the boy at the studio. So, hoping for the best, Toshinori answered. Toshinori speaking. Are you insane? Mirai cut him off, barely restraining the anger in his voice. You gave the most powerful quirk in history to a quirkless supervillain. Immediately Toshinori's hopes had been dashed, replaced with righteous anger on his successor's behalf. Mirai, what are you talking about? Midoriya is not a supervillain. Where did you even get that idea? The news report that just came in on Plastic Beach News. Mirai responded curtly. What? Opening up his phone's web browser, Toshinori quickly checked PBN's website and nearby coughed up blood in shock when he saw the image of Midoriya in full Mysterio costume, but with his green hair visible, being lead out by Hound Dog and Present Mike. What's Midoriya doing on the late-night news? So you admit that is your chosen successor? Toshinori didn't respond to his former sidekick immediately, only looking through the article posted with the picture. Thankfully, it seemed that the news article didn't actually drop young Midoriya's name, only Mysterio's, so at least he would be spared from harassment at home. That didn't stop the article's writer, one Jitsu Fuhai, from spreading gossip and baseless accusations that the boy had been the one to let the villains into the school, or suggesting that the thing had been set up by Midoriya to garner attention by acting as the one hero able to save the day while the teachers had been rendered helpless. So what if he is? And you just assumed that it was my successor despite the lack of a name? No, I made an educated guess based on their body type and hair color, along with your propensity for being short-sighted. Midoriya is a good fit for this power, Mirai. Toshinori growled, the hand not holding his phone clenching tightly. But he's taken up the identity of a villain who attacked Japan and plagued one of the most respected pre-Quirk era heroes. Your successor needs to inspire peace, not hatred or fear. Midoriya's actions will prove that he is a hero, but he won't be good enough to be the next #1 hero. Not everything is about the charts and polls, Mirai. Well, you can't hand your quirk out to some random child with a sob story. It has to be to someone who can use it the right way and is worthy of your legacy, and Midoriya is not that person. That isn't your call to make, Sasaki. The phone fell silent, Mirai most likely seething quietly on the other end. Toshinori took a deep breath and continued. Midoriya is more than aware of the scorn that persona will bring. He's already had to face it from classmates, but he wants to prove to the world that anyone can be a hero. He has a drive unlike anyone else I've met, and the determination to get it done. He may not be the next symbol of peace, but he will be a symbol of hope and redemption. Your idealism can be so infuriating sometimes. Mirai muttered, I just want you to look at this pragmatically. The world can't lose All Might, but it will. Toshinori said quietly, even if, tomorrow morning, I woke up with the body in the state it was in when I debuted in Japan, quirk at full power, I'm not going to be around forever. The world has learned to live without Steve Rogers and Peter Parker, and soon it will need to learn to live without Yagi Toshinori. Then why aren't you picking Mirio? He's the perfect choice to be the next All Might. Toshinori sighed, rubbing his temples with his free hand. How ironic. A sad part of him noted that his friend who could see into the future couldn't see past what was right in front of him, what All Might had just told him. I'm sorry, Mirai, but I've made my choice. Damn it, Toshinori. And without another world, Mirai hung up. Toshinori rubbed his temples. He thought that the worst of the day's stresses would be over, but it looked like it was going to continue well into the week. What's more, it was clear to the symbol of peace that whoever had taken that photo obviously had an agenda. He doubted it was the entire reason the school had been invaded in the first place. That Shigaraki person had made their mission of killing him abundantly clear, but they obviously capitalized on the opportunity to hurt Yue. Only now, they were setting everyone else after his apprentice. Breaking news: villains attending Yue High School. Good evening, Japan. This is Jitsu Fuhai of Shueisha News, here with a follow-up report to this afternoon's top story. Earlier today, we received shocking news that Yue High School, the #1 hero school in Japan, was infiltrated by a group calling themselves the League of Villains. Thankfully, no serious injuries were placed upon the students, although the rescue heroes and UA teachers 13 and 𝐵 Hero 6 had received injuries that required immediate care. But only half an hour ago, an anonymous source sent in photographs taken from the site of the students being let out by the teachers, which clearly depict one of the students in a costume. Why is this so disturbing? Because the student in question was dressed as the quirkless villain Mysterio. For those of you unaware, Mysterio, real name Quentin Beck, was an American villain who most often opposed Spider-Man, real name Peter Benjamin Parker, back in a time when quirks didn't exist and powers made up only 25% of the planet's population. Despite lacking a powers or mutations, however, Beck was notorious in his home of New York City for his use of advanced illusion technology and robots, his final scheme sending him to Japan, where he used a giant robot disguised as a kaiju to cover up the robbery of several buildings by Beck's men. Spider-Man had stopped the villain in his tracks after only 30 minutes. But his rampage is still remembered by many to this day, so the idea of a student in a hero school was dressed as this man is disturbing to say the least. In addition, given that the late villain was well known for illusions and deceit, this reporter cannot help but wonder if the attack on Yue and a boy dressed in his outfit is merely a coincidence, or perhaps the events are correlated somehow. As of yet, we've received no comment on the villain student from UAS Principal Nezu. The day after the story was dropped was intense for 𝗬𝗓𝗓. Thankfully, the news didn't appear to know who it was in the Mysterio costume, but the fact that the picture was taken at all disturbed 𝗬𝗓𝗓, especially since he noticed that the news stations and websites that seemed the most determined to put the story out were the ones that were owned by Shueisha Publishing and Feel Gooding, two groups which 𝗬𝗓𝗓 had suspicions about the activities of, but could find no concrete evidence about. Either way, that picture had spread like wildfire online. Various hashtags such as #VillainOfYuehigh, #NewMysterio, #SpiderManVillain, #FakeHero, #QuirklessVillainy, #USJ Publicity Stunt, and more had been trending on various media sites. Accompanying each one were various commenters describing fear, outrage, disgust, and in some extreme cases, death threats against the boy for his perceived involvement in the USJ attack. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 made sure to report those particular cases and flagged them as spam to be removed from the sites hosting them. But that didn't stop them from appearing. The only silver lining was that Midoriya tended to avoid social media sites in general due to an aggressive cyberbullying campaign one of his older classmates had started. The result of which was that Midoriya was thankfully not directly exposed to the worst of these detractors, though Midoriya was still made aware of them. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 wasn't going to list any more of the comments, articles, and chatrooms being made to discuss this, but it seemed his classmates were still texting him questions regarding the exposure. One good thing about this ordeal was that it seemed that Midoriya had at least earned the trust of his classmate, since none of them were accusing him of evil acts, though 𝗀𝐻 seemed to be more insistent upon Midoriya changing his identity now more than ever. How's the new project going? Brought out of his brooding, 𝗬𝗓𝗓 focused on Midoriya, who was at a workbench, tinkering with a new model of combat drone, one designed to defend, rescue, and protect civilians during a villain attack or disaster. Project 𝐸𝗚 is still in the planning stages, but I calculate that it will not be ready for some time now, most likely by summer break. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 turned to Midoriya, unsure of how to talk about what he had shared last night. How are you taking? Midoriya stopped working for a moment, fiddling with his utility tool as he tried to put his thoughts into words. I'm worried. Well, naturally, the fact that you've been outed prematurely before you could garner a heroic reputation must be about my classmate. Midoriya clarified. I beg your pardon. That picture only shows my green hair, but but lots of people have green hair, like Tsu from my class. Midoriya turned to look at his AI mentor. I'm scared that people will harass them, thinking that they're Mysterio, or just because they know me, a villain. I've already seen it happen before. You don't care about how you will be treated? Subaraya asked, not expecting this outcome from his apprentice. Of course I do, but I've spent most of my life as a second-class citizen in all but name, bullied for trying to dream about being a hero, and no one knew of my choice in persona. Midoriya pointed out, I was already expecting to be disliked. It came earlier than I had hoped, sure, but I'm ultimately ready to face the backlash. I'm just worried about how it'll affect anyone around me. An interesting perspective. Perhaps you should talk to your classmates, help them through the experience of the USJ, and they, in turn, could help you with this slander and libel. Subaraya suggested. That's not a bad idea. Midoriya nodded, setting aside the tool. Maybe I could invite my friends here. What? Are you sure? Subaraya asked. This place is kept secret for a reason, and bringing more people in makes it more likely to be exposed. I'm not inviting everyone, just a few people, Midoriya explained. And hey, this act might show them just how dedicated we are to the hero business. Very well, though I'm going on record by saying that I feel that this is a bad idea. The AI muttered. Who do you want me to send the invites to? 𝗧𝗏 News Discussions Board Fangs Forth Memories. Can you believe this? A villain at UA. 𝗫𝐬𝐻 number 1. And he's quirkless too. 𝗫𝐿 at 𝗫𝐬𝐻 number what makes you say that? 𝗫𝐬𝐻 number 1. Cause the 𝐷 Mysterio was quirkless 𝐬𝐍𝐭 𝐖𝐴 doesn't mean he's quirkless, just insensitive raptor locksmith. At 𝐬𝐍𝐭 he shouldn't be using a villain persona at all. Deadpool's undies. Maybe he's there to infiltrate the school. Ant-Man and the Wombats. At Deadpool's undies. Hey yeah, that makes sense. He helps villains infiltrate the school, helps fend them off, and looks good in the process. 𝐴𝐻𝐢𝐬 was upset. No, wait, that's not right. 𝐴𝐻𝐢𝐬 was super fucking pissed off. Much better. She wanted to go Hulk smash on those idiots who were calling her friend a villain because he chose to dress up as a villain that wasn't even native to Japan. All morning, 𝐴𝐻𝐢𝐬 had read article after article, discussion board after discussion board, and each one was talking about how her classmate, the one who went up to the villains on his own to keep them distracted while she and the others moved the unconscious Aizawa away, was somehow involved in the invasion. Each time she read one such article, she had to resist the urge to place all 5 fingers on her phone and send it after that softball from the quirk apprehension test. But that wasn't the main reason she was angry. Oh, it was a big part of it, but it was only a part of it. The main reason she was angry was that she had felt so useless during the whole attack. Her only way of fighting was touching boulders and throwing them like baseballs at the villains chasing her. An effective tactic, maybe, but more than once she ran out of things to grab, or she encountered a villain who simply endured or knocked away her projectiles, leaving her to have to rely on Minda to stop them. She had many times tried to flee by taking to the air, but several had been fast, far too fast for her to dodge even without gravity holding her down. Then there was that scumbag who had grabbed her, deciding that she was an easier target over her diminutive classmate. 𝐴𝐻𝐢𝐬 was more than well aware that if it hadn't been for Toru, she likely wouldn't have gotten away on her own. The man's electricity a near-perfect counter to her touch-based quirk. She wasn't strong or fast enough to do anything to him, even when Midoriya said he needed her for his plan. It basically amounted to hide until I say so, then just smack the bird guy in the face and run. Sure, she didn't know what else she could have done against 𝐷, but she felt like, had she been more prepared, she could have at least helped Midoriya against Blood Spider. She could have taken him down so that the villains in charge would have been arrested instead of escaping. But she couldn't, and that lit a new fire in her heart. All her life, she had admired rescue heroes, people like 𝗀 and 𝐵𝑃𝐸, who went out to rescue people in situations that couldn't be simply punched through. It made her feel better about her own quirk, which, while useful, was so limited and would cause her issues if used too long. But fighting in the mountain zone, and seeing 𝗀 and 𝐵𝑃𝐸's injuries while she had been getting medical attention incurred an epiphany in the young girl. Much like the water hose duo, her teachers focused more on rescue operations or teaching rather than close combat, and suffered dearly as a result. In this particular case, it had caused near-fatal injuries to both of them. 𝐴𝐻𝐢𝐬 would still focus on being a hero who specialized in rescue missions, but she would also be one who would be strong enough to fight any villains who would dare to hurt anyone she saved, and fast enough to get people out of the way. So that's why when internships started up, she was going to seek out a hero who specialized in close-quarters combat. Still, that electric villain had moved fast, and she wasn't exactly Quicksilver while in the air. So how could she possibly get faster? She was brought out of her musings when her phone chimed. 𝐴𝐻𝐢𝐬 blinked in surprise as she read the message. It only took a few seconds of thought before she sent her reply. Greenfish0WL. Hey 𝐴𝐻𝐢𝐬, Toru, Mina, it's Midoriya. Want to hang out at a safe place, away from the reporters? Millennial Falcon. alright. Hey, is everything okay? 𝐸𝐴, it's tough, but I can't let them get to me. So I thought I could invite a few friends over to my workshop. Freakachu, oh hey, were you hanging? Can I come too? 𝐸𝐴, sure, but fair warning, it's in Corellia. 𝗃𝗃 2 divided by 𝐸, Corellia. Isn't that place dangerous? 𝐸𝐴, no, just has a lot of burecumen, but don't worry, they're friendly. 𝗃𝗃 2 divided by 𝐸, oh, alright then, mind if I come too? 𝐸𝐵 at 𝗃𝗃 2 divided by 𝐸, not at all. Shinkansen at 𝗃𝐻 Midoriya. I cannot condone you attempting to abscond with your classmates in such a manner. What if something goes wrong? You're already on thin ice with the media. 𝗵𝗃𝗏, did you seriously text abscond? LOL 𝗃𝗻 at Shinkansen, why do you think I mentioned the district in a group chat that the teachers could read? I can't get more specific than that though. 𝗃𝗏, why not Kiro? 𝗃𝗻, it's a secret to everyone. 𝗃𝗻, but actually it's because it's at WMH, and I can't disclose the exact street without you guys signing an NDA first for legal reason. 𝗃𝗏, makes sense Kiro. Freakachu, at 𝗃𝗏, why you put a Kiro in 𝑟TXDS? 𝗃𝗏, it's part of my hero brand Kiro. Crimson Friat, committing to a theme. So manly. Alien Queen takes Bishop. At Crimson Friat 980 Alien Queen takes Bishop. At 𝗃𝗻, sadly I won't be able to go. My moms are acting a bit clingy after everything that happened at the USJ. 𝗵𝗃𝗏, at 𝗃𝗻, ditto on my end. 𝗃𝗻, okay, I understand though. 𝗵𝗃𝗏, at 𝗃𝗻, also, love the mask you made for me Midoriya. 𝗀𝗲, our illusionist friend has crafted a visage for our invisible comrade. 𝗀𝗲, let me see. 𝗀𝗲, sorry, Dark Shadow got a hold of my foe 𝗀𝗲, DS here. Takoyami won't let me make my own account. Greater than XX God Explosion Murder Kinks X. At 𝗵𝗃𝗏, the fuck you need a mask for? 𝗵𝗃𝗏, I don't, but sometimes I wonder what my face actually looks like. Ochako was distracted from the rest of the group chat by an email sent by Midoriya. Going to her school-supplied tablet, she opened up the email. Hey Ochako, this is the NDA you need to sign. Please make sure to read it over first before signing. Tedious, I know, but this will help when we become heroes. Once you're done, send it back to me, and I'll email you the address. Beneath the short message was a document that she opened up. After a quick read-through, Ochako wrote her digital signature and sent it back. Only a minute later, she got the address back. Gyro sat in the train, her headphones plugged into her phone, partly to listen to some music, but mainly to hide her distinctive earjacks. Being the daughter of a relatively successful musician meant that she was used to hiding her heteromorphic trait so that she'd be left alone by fans. But with Midoriya's picture being online and her own contribution to getting rid of that Nama, she wasn't going to risk being harassed, whether for knowledge on Midoriya, by any wannabe villains wanting to make a name for themselves, or simply for being a heteromorph. At least none of her classmates gave her crap for it. Even the worst one, Bakugo, just tended to put everyone down in general instead of focusing on anyone or their traits in particular. Thinking about her classmates got Gyro thinking about the one that was making the news. Unfairly so, in her opinion. Midoriya was a weird kid, but then, she didn't mind that. He seemed flippant on his attitudes, swapping between socially awkward dork to passionate enthusiast to devious hero, but she figured that it was due to his illusionist and acting skills influencing him. Her dad behaved totally differently on stage than off stage. After all, so she could get Midoriya acting differently depending on the situation. Pulled from her thoughts by the train slowing down, Gyro glanced at the prompter and, seeing it was her stop, got off the train. The earjack heroine in training exited the train station, looking around the neighborhood of Corellia. She had never been to this neighborhood herself, but her middle school classmates would whisper about it, saying that it was a seedy place that was a wretched hive of scum and villainy matched only by the Kessel district in Hasu. A place that you were likely to be robbed unless you joined a gang. But honestly, it just looked sad. It was mostly several old buildings, cracked sidewalks, and a couple of dirty stores along her path. She did spot a few burecumen wandering around, but none of them bothered her. She eventually made it to Jason Street, where she saw Kaminari, Ochako, and a girl with pink dreadlocks she had seen around UA approaching her. Hatsum, Ochako called to the girl, who looked up from a sketchbook she had her nose in, having been startled by the Gravity Girl's voice. Oh, Chako, right. The girl, May said, snapping her notebook shut. Is this everyone coming? You know her? Kaminari asked, tossing an empty hamburger wrapper in a nearby trash can. Yeah, May Hatsum is one of Midoriya's friends, and she helped make our costumes. The Gravity Girl explained. Oh, awesome. That circuit breaker thing is awesome. By the way, I'd have been useless and probably dead several times over without it, 𝐀𝐦 told the girl with a smile, who just smiled slightly and muttered glad you like it before looking away. Apparently this was unusual, because 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿 looked at her in surprise and a bit of concern. Before she could vocalize her thoughts, another voice spoke up. "Ah, good, 4 of you showed up." From behind a boarded-up DVD store, a Caucasian man with white hair and a goatee appeared, rubbing his glasses on his brown suit before replacing them on his face. "Hey Tsubu," May said simply, returning to her notebook without so much as an upward glance. "You're Tsuburaya, Midoriya's trainer?" 𝐀𝐦 asked. "Among other things," he said with a shrug. "Anyways, Midoriya is expecting you all. Please, follow me." Without another word, he led the 4 around the back of the building. "Miss Yashida," he nodded to an older woman in the alleyway, who looked up from her ramen cup and hummed in response. After only a moment's hesitation, the 4 students followed him to the back door, which swung open on its own as he approached. Gyro blinked in surprise. She wasn't sure what she was expecting to see in the building, but a nice, if plain rec room wasn't it? She thought that she was visiting a support company, not a clubhouse. "Is that a gym in the back?" 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿 asked, looking past the room to where the main area of the store would have been. "A testing ground," Tsuburaya clarified, but turned to a shelf filled with DVDs and wait, it's a hidden door. It must have been, because as he approached the shelf swung wide open, revealing a hidden staircase, right out of a murder mystery novel. "Whoa, it's like something out of Lupin 3. 𝐀𝐦 gasped with a smile. Tsuburaya nodded and gestured for them to follow him down the flight of steps. They made it down, the modern comfort from the ground floor transforming into something out of a fantasy-styled dungeon. The next door, under the watchful gaze of a stone gargoyle, opened up as Tsuburaya approached it, and Gyro could feel her jaw drop at the sight. "Whoa," 𝐀𝐦 muttered. "Is all this?" 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿 asked, looking around the chamber in awe at the costumes, animatronics, wax statues, and models that filled the chamber. "The Japanese lair of the original Mysterio," Tsuburaya said, before a swarm of pixels enshrouded him, and emerging from it was a man in Mysterio's original outfit. "And my originator, you're an AI?" 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿 asked, hands on her cheeks in shock. She started to hover, but Gyro caught her and pulled her back down. Fighting an embarrassed blush, 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿 restored gravity to herself. "I am Tsuburaya, Mysterio," the AI confirmed. "I was made by Dr. Otto Octavius from the brain scan of Quentin Beck, here to guide the next Mysterio to take up the mantle. And that would be me." Everyone looked over, Midoriya stepping out from behind an animatronic Dr. Octopus. The green-haired boy was wearing a casual t-shirt with the kanji for kimono written across it, cargo shorts, and his favorite red sneakers. I thought you said we were gonna be at Wondrous Might and Heroism," 𝐀𝐦 said, not offended so much as in shock. Shock. "You are," Midoriya explained. "Wondrous Might and Heroism is how I funded my Mysterio persona, and it all started here." While Midoriya explained to his friends the history behind his legacy and company, Tsuburaya vanished, reappearing next to the only true employee of Wondrous Might and Heroism. "What's wrong?" May jolted from her spot, hunched over her notebook. "Well, nothing's wrong," she insisted, a smile plastered on her face. Tsuburaya only gave her a hard glare for a few seconds before she relented. I'm scared for Midoriya. Barely 24 hours ago he was fighting off real villains, and only survived because he got lucky and figured out that new technique of his, and All Might showed up to scare away the remaining villains." "I am aware," Tsuburaya said calmly, "but he got through it with only minor fractions in his arms, which Recovery Girl healed up instantly." "I know, but it's just..." They looked down. "Midoriya's my friend. The only friend I've ever really had. And I wasn't there to help him." Tsuburaya raised an eyebrow. He knew that May was considered an outcast, but he had never expected her to have been that lonely. "I mean, before I met him, I was fine with being alone. Gave me more time to make my babies, you know," May said with a small laugh. "I thought I didn't have time for friendship, that it was a distraction at best and an annoyance at worst, and even if by some chance I did make friends, they'd all be in the support course, away from danger. Why be concerned with the heroes when I'm not going to be involved beyond making gear for them? But then, you made a friend in the hero course, and you realized how close you came to losing him." Tsuburaya finished for her. "Yeah, I don't want to lose my friend," May said, tears in the corner of her eyes. "I want to be beside him, making sure that no more Namo or jerks put him in danger again." "How do you intend to do that?" "You're in the support course," Tsuburaya pointed out. May stopped to think, her fingers twitching compulsively as she tried to think of something. "If a student in a non-combat course wins the UA Sports Festival, we can be considered for entrance into the hero course," May said, her eyes widening, before she saw the obvious problem. "But I'm not that strong or tough. How could I possibly do something like that? Maybe I could make a baby to train my body as I slept." "If I may make a somewhat saner suggestion," 𝐬𝐵 brought up a hologram of a prototype device, one that was an improvement on a bit of older villain tech. Scooping it up in his hand, he presented it to the pink-haired tinkerer. Didn't that drive the original crazy? May asked, looking at the device warily. The original device was made on a limited budget using only the technology that was available at the time, and was untested prior to its use. I've since improved upon it, and this device is far safer, with countermeasures against any damages, 𝐬𝐵 assured her. You just want Midoriya to make a new Sinister Six, huh? May said with a small smirk. What? How dare you? 𝐬𝐵 gasped in faux offense, putting a hand to his mouth dramatically. I would never suggest a Sinister Six to the heroic Mysterio. The AI then smirked at the girl. But a Savior Six, on the other hand. Excuse me. 𝐬𝐵 and May looked over, 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿 standing behind the two patiently. You're making support gear out of villain tech, right? And if we are? 𝐬𝐵 calmly asked, dismissing the hologram in his hand. Can I get something too? 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿 asked. For the first time that day, May had a genuine smile on her face. Those bastards. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was angry, pissed off, and severely annoyed. Unlike his classmates, who had been terrified or scared of the villains, 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 had a blast at the USJ. He got to fight against real villains. He thought that wasn't going to happen until he got his provisional license. But hey, this just proved how badass he was. And hey, he made a friend. Kirishima was a dumbass, but he was able to take anything 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 could dish out and return it, both figuratively and, as a few attacks done in the moment by the two proved, literally. The only thing that bothered him about the incident was how the heat eventually started to get to him. But when he got out, escorted by one of that gashapon-faced Deku's drones of all things, he learned that Deku had already taken out the toughest villain there. He did something that let him overpower the villain and send it flying. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was supposed to be the one who proved his strength, not Deku. Deku was a shitty pebble who had to rely on illusions to complement his shitty fake quirks backlash. Instead, he pulled off some illusionary gambit shit and unlocked a technique to power himself up at the last minute like some fucking Dragon Ball Z protagonist. He got to be the hero of the day. The only other person who seemed even close to being annoyed was Icy Hot, and even then he just huffed and moved away. But then, why is no one acknowledging Midoriya's actions? That voice of his younger self would ask. That, honestly, pissed him off the most. The school was attacked and instead everyone was wasting their energy spreading bullshit rumors about Deku. He didn't like the loser, yeah, but he could admit that Deku was ultimately doing something good. Hell, his advice to aim for that smoke-faced fucker's neck actually helped. Though 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 would never admit it out loud. But no, everyone just cared about that fucking costume he wore. It had been a long time since Beck died, and anyone who had lost someone to the quirkless bastard would have been dead at this point. Besides, heroes used the names of Dracula and the Black Knight, two villains from the past, and they didn't get shit over it. Why do they have to be so focused on something so stupid? But we did something similar in the past. The young voice, 𝐀𝐦 he couldn't help but think, said in the back of his mind. But wait, who the hell did he talk about? At Aldra and earlier, Midoriya wasn't being put down for being a villain, so who the hell was he thinking? Oh, Marrow. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 remembered that older kid he used to hang out with, the one many thought would be a great hero one day. It wasn't because 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 wanted to ride his coattails or anything. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was more than capable of getting popularity on his own. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 had gone to Marrow for help with training his own quirk, Marrow's quirk. Letting him blast hot wind from his hands seemed weak, but he had trained it to the point that it would have been devastating to fight against. So naturally, 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 thought he'd be a good teacher to improve his own power since, at the time, his explosions barely had the strength of a cap gun with only light sparks. Marrow had helped him train his power, taught him how to store up the sweat he needed in his palms, instead of just blasting what he had immediately. And 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 betrayed him. He had heard from his lackey, a winged boy named Tsubasa, about Marrow's uncle being arrested, supposedly for illegal quirk usage. When 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 had heard about it, he ran into the crowded hallways to confront the boy, screaming about it at the top of his lungs. Needless to say, everyone had heard about the supposed villain nephew and avoided Marrow like he was radioactive. Some of the older kids even started to bully Marrow, leaving insults and threats on his stuff. Not long after, his parents pulled him from school. Only the three had died in a surprise villain attack a few weeks later. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 had attended the funeral. He hadn't said anything, but he silently regretted ever opening his stupid mouth in that hallway. If he could change one thing in his life, it'd be fixing the moment where he unintentionally killed his first real mentor. The worst part, in all honesty, was that 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 couldn't even remember if that rumor had been true or not. You haven't done right by Marrow, 𝐀𝐦 whispered to him, but you can still do right by Midoriya. A ridiculous idea. Deku belonged in the business or gen ed courses, at best. He didn't have what it takes to be a hero. But isn't that what people thought about Spider-Man? That he wasn't a hero? 𝐀𝐦 asked 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻. Which, okay, yeah, everyone underestimated Spider-Man. And, did it really matter if Midoriya's power was a quirk or not? Wait, of course it does. Quirks are everything. But then why is he at the top of the class and we aren't? Oi, brat. I'm going to the store. You want anything? Bakugo, stirred out of his thoughts, snarled and turned to the doorway, knocking a few knickknacks off his desk in the process. Just more chocolate. Bakugo turned back to his computer, annoyed that his train of thought had vanished. The school had given notification that classes were cancelled so that the students could properly process and heal after everything they had gone through. Bakugo didn't need that. He was just fine. He saw villains, he kicked their asses, and got out without any wounds that were worse than what he'd get from sparring. Then again, hearing voices that sound like your childhood self pointing out your innermost flaws and mistakes probably warranted a trip to a therapist. Maybe he should bring this up if he ever decided to visit Hound Dog, the school guidance counselor, 𝗀𝐻. Not likely, though. So instead, Bakugo got off from his desk and went to his bed, almost tripping on a strange meteorite he had found years ago in the woods. Midoriya has a sweet thing going on, Kaminari thought to himself. But wait, what is this place exactly? His dungeon, chamber, basement, company, lair. That works lair was massive and full of cool stuff. Kaminari was admittedly bad with his knowledge of history, but he was at least somewhat familiar with Spider-Man and Mysterio. He was initially unsure of what to make of Midoriya's persona, but now he knew the guy was pretty cool. He would be an awesome friend. Just like the original Mysterio and Electro. Speaking of, he admittedly didn't know what to make of Midoriya being taught by Mysterio's ghost. But hey, the guy was alright for a former villain. He seemed pretty chill about having a bunch of hero students in his lair, and would happily answer any questions they asked of him. The AI even gave them all a tour of the workshop, pointing out the robots, makeup, costumes, and animatronics used in his various schemes, many of which were reenacted in models. The guy didn't even sound bitter over Spider-Man. Oh guys, check this out. Midoriya came over, carrying some kind of miniature purple gargoyle, imp thing with green eyes, wearing gold armor similar to Midoriya's Mysterio outfit. It was looking around curiously, muttering to itself, "Lots of heroes. So scary. This is 𝐻𝐸 the homunculus. I made him out of one of Mysterio's old robots that he used in a scheme of his." See, he was faking being a sorcerer crusading against technology, so he used these little guys to act as his summons. Midoriya said happily, "I finished making him just a few days ago, and I've been itching to show him off." "Henson?" Gyro asked, looking the little guy over, who tilted its head at her. After Jim Henson, whose work with puppetry in cinema and television was revolutionary, Midoriya said with a blush. "It's so cute." 𝐴𝐻𝐸 came over, petting its head. Henson rumbled happily and leaned into it. "You built an AI?" Jiraiya asked, impressed at the little guy, who was muttering to itself. "Well, it's not a true AI, since it's not capable of independent thought. It's more like an assistive operating system with personality and pre-programmed responses." Midoriya admitted with an embarrassed shrug. "I lack the capability to make a smart AI." Henson not dumb. Henson smarts. The robot in question protested. "Yes, you are." 𝐴𝐻𝐸 cooed, lightly scratching Henson with 2 fingers, who cooed and nuzzled her hand. "Did you seriously build a cute animal mascot, Midoriya?" Gyro asked, smirking a little. "Well, when I eventually get the merchandising deals, I'm gonna need something to corner the kawaii fandom." Midoriya responded cheekily, "To say nothing of the anime adaptation of my life, and the toy lines I'm planning. Maybe a breakfast cereal while I'm at it." Kaminari snorted in laughter. Yeah, he was definitely enjoying hanging out with Mystery Bro. Oh, 𝐴𝐻𝐸. The pink-haired girl, May, came over, carrying some blueprints under her arms. "I found some stuff that should be suitable for what you requested." "Requested?" Kaminari asked. "I wanted to see if Midoriya could help with support items to improve on a few flaws I noticed in my fighting style. Namely that I'm not all that fast when I lack gravity." 𝐴𝐻𝐸 admitted. "We still have to discuss payment." Tsuburaya grumbled, while 𝐴𝐻𝐸 went very still in fear. "Tsuburaya," Midoriya muttered. "Midoriya, I know you want to help your friends, but we're a business. We can't just give away tech because you're friends with the person." Tsuburaya protested. "I know, but there's other ways we can get a profit besides cash," Midoriya said, before turning to the gravity girl. 𝐴𝐻𝐸, would you be willing to act as an advertiser for Wondrous Might and Heroism during the sports festival and your internship to work off the payment? 𝐴𝐻𝐸's eyes widened. "But Midoriya, there's no way that it'd cover the cost of even basic support gear." Good point," Midoriya said, tapping his chin with a thoughtful look, before shrugging. "Well then, I guess you'll have to just advertise for us for the next decade. Oh, but in that time we'll need to provide you with our best upgrades. For free, naturally. Gotta show everyone what we're capable of, after all." Gyro, May, and Kaminari stared in shock at the green-haired boy, the same thought on each of their minds. Did he seriously just give 𝐴𝐻𝐸 free stuff and make it sound like a sales pitch? "You have got to be joking." Tsuburaya responded flatly. "Henson-like." 𝐀𝐦 simply fainted into the arms of a Spider-Man animatronic. Red. That was all that was around him, leaking out from the body of this pretender that laid before him. He, like many others before him and currently, wore a mask and cape, not to do the duty of heroes and save people, but to reap glory, money, toy lines, and movie deals. It was sickening. The blood almost fixed the scene. It was dark and beautiful, fixing the false hero in his ornate facade. Red upon gold. Honest filth marring deceptive beauty. The victim had been a false hero by the name of 𝐬𝐻𝐬. His quirk allowed him to temporarily turn anything he touched into gold, even living things. People were unharmed, but in stasis. A man bleeding out would have been safely brought to the hospital to be stitched up. Granted, there was complete sensory deprivation and lack of movement from those converted, but it would have been able to save lives. Yet despite how useful it was, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 spent more time advertising for businesses and marketing his own merchandise, including his distinctive gold smile mask. Despite the emphasis on his wallet, however, he had proven to be surprisingly dangerous. It would not have been much of a stretch to imagine that the false hero would have won this bout, had his killer not managed to lick the blood off one of the knives he kept on his person. It had been a long time since he'd used his quirk. When he first began, he was weak, unskilled beyond basic sword stances and knife throwing. Encountering 𝐀𝐦 was a life-altering experience. When he first began crusading, he had targeted only those who had power, but no conviction. But then he was enlightened by the vigilante's words. Now he knew to target only the source of the corruption. False idols that fell short of true heroism. His phone went off. No one was calling. But a new threat had appeared in the hero forums he frequented. Pulling out his phone, the man's eyes narrowed at the sight of the boy in the costume, being treated for wounds after surviving an attack. The rest of the article was biased filth about how the boy didn't fit their focus group-approved definition of heroics. Still, he would have to look further into this boy. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 adjusted his scarf, in the process covering up the tattoo on the back of his neck, one depicting a stylized yellow lion's head and brown mane overlaid upon two crossed spears in black ink. It was the symbol of the men and women who taught him how to rely on more than his quirk. The symbol of a man who fought a hero that many had hated when they were alive. But history looked upon the latter favorably in spite of his glaring flaws. But the clan was not involved in this. They respected 𝐀𝐦 territory, and the prey within it. Yes, prey such as that fake hero Ingenium, and this, Mysterio. He would have to keep an eye on this possible false villain. Such brazen displays of a villainous persona could be a sign of either arrogance or a statement. 𝐀𝐦 would wait and see. His masters had taught him to be patient, to watch for the signs before leaping into action, lest his prey escape early, or worse yet not be his target. But should the new Mysterio be another false hero, the hero killer stain will have to start a new hunt. Gyro looked around the room, done up to resemble a town from an American Western film, complete with animatronic horses and a saloon. She walked through, her jacks ready to plug in at a moment's notice. Bang! A shot whizzed past her, and Gyro turned to the rooftop, an animatronic gunslinger taking aim with a paintball gun. Gyro took aim and blasted it with her gauntlets, the focused shockwaves sending it flying back. Another gunslinger appeared, and Gyro took him out too. A third animatronic appeared, but she stopped herself from attacking. It was a kindly-looking old lady with a cane hobbling down the road, who promptly spun around, her other arm raised with a revolver, and fired a paintball into Gyro's chest, knocking her down. A buzzer sounded, and you're dead. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 appeared, resetting the projectile training course. How was I supposed to know that the old lady was a threat? Gyro spat back. You mean aside from being completely calm and collected while a gunfight was happening around her? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 asked. You need to take context into account. Gyro opened her mouth, but shut it after a second. I wasn't expecting that from an innocent, especially in training. Take it from an illusionist. The more innocuous something looks, the more dangerous it can be. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 told her. You need to be aware of the little things. The sweat from a man lying to your face. A man with a gun glancing at his next target. A quiet child wearing long sleeves and turtlenecks to hide bruises caused by daddy. That's really dark. Gyro muttered as she got back up. Reality is a messed up place, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 said with a shrug. If it wasn't, there wouldn't be so many horrible people. Well, before I get back to your reality, I think I'm going to get a drink of water first, Gyro said, exiting the shooting gallery. On the way back, she passed by Midoriya, wearing a smock, protective goggles, a respirator around his neck, rubber gloves, and carrying. Was that a bucket of blood? Hey Gyro, Midoriya said casually as he passed by. Gyro looked at the bucket tepidly. Oh, I'm just about to test a new material for my costume, Midoriya explained. See, Blood Spider found me by splattering some blood against my suit, and I realized that I forgot to make my suit repellent to liquid. So I've mixed up some realistic stage blood to see if the new coating will work at keeping the liquid from sticking to me. If not, I'll have to try the Teflon-based adhesive, which will cause its own litany of issues. Midoriya Midoriya blinked and looked up, seeing J.𝐸 was staring. "Oh, sorry. Nah, it's fine," she said with a shrug. "Though I gotta ask, why don't you just use that adhesive dissolving stuff you used to free 𝐬𝐻 from the glue? The adhesion dissolvent spray is designed to chemically break down adhesives found in glue, tape, webbing, and other stuff so that it's brittle and easy to tear off. But dried blood clings to the suit and would require a lot of scrubbing with chemicals to remove, which takes time that I might not have. Although I could try to mix up something to add to the spray to hopefully solve that issue." Midoriya muttered to himself before he was interrupted. "Hey, Midoriya, do you know any way to break the ice with your AI?" J.𝐸 asked, wrapping her earjack around a finger nervously. "The guy's been acting intense. Yeah, he's protective of me, and not many people know about this place," Midoriya admitted. Thinking about what he knew of J.𝐸 and 𝗬𝗲, Midoriya thought of something that could help. 𝗬𝗲 makes music in his spare time. "He does?" J.𝐸 asked, surprised. "Yeah, apparently Beck released an album when he was alive, and 𝗬𝗲 makes new pieces when he gets bored," Midoriya explained with a shrug. "I think he's trying to write up the soundtrack for a Mysterio movie or video game." J.𝐸 smirked. "Well, I'll see if I can help him with that." "Awesome. Best of luck," Midoriya said, continuing on to the workshop upstairs. J.𝐸 smiled, then went back to the training room where 𝗬𝗲 was, sitting at a desk, typing all play and no work makes 𝗬𝗲 a dull boy over and over again on an old-fashioned typewriter. "Hey, I feel like switching to hand. Got any Japanese rock on hand to get into the spirit?" "I can't believe this, Gentle-sama." Danjuro Tabata, alias Gentle Criminal, looked over from his chair, setting aside a teacup. "My dear 𝗬𝗲, what has gotten you so worked up?" Minami Aba, alias 𝗬𝗲, looked up from her phone with a large pout on her face. "This Mysterio student has gotten more views and comments in the past half day than you have since you started your escapades. And you just uploaded a video exposing Coca Soda's falsified ingredients. Yes, it seems that the controversy around the child has eclipsed us and our exploits." Gentle Criminal stroked his goatee in thought. "But worry not, my dear 𝗬𝗲, for I have a plan to put us back in the spotlight." "Really?" 𝗬𝗲 looked up, her anger forgotten at her partner's assurances. "Oh yes. However, I fear that the Gentle Criminal may not be able to do this on his own. He'll be needing a helping of bad luck. For his enemies, that is," Danjuro explained. For a moment, 𝗬𝗲 was confused, when it clicked suddenly. All that training he had her do, that strange equipment he had her purchase from wondrous might and heroism, it all made sense now. "I get to debut alongside you." The diminutive woman squealed in joy, but a sudden thought cut across her mind. "I just hope that Detective Night Guy leaves us alone. He nearly caught us in those bandages of his. And worse, he had the audacity to mock you." "Don't worry, we won't be anywhere near Corellia this time," he assured her. "Are you ready for your first costume fitting, my dear black cat?" "Okay, try lifting your right leg," they called from the testing room. 𝐴𝐻𝐸 nodded. She was wearing a protective full-body suit, upon which was a basic exoskeleton. The idea was to see which add-ons would work best for 𝐴𝐻𝐸 before building her a custom support item. Right now she was testing Iron Man-based power armor for movement and flight capability. She tried walking forward, but despite the suit being matched to her size, she couldn't help but feel uncomfortable at the way the suit moved. "I dunno, this feels too unwieldy," 𝐴𝐻𝐸 muttered. "Maybe I can try something a bit lighter." "Can't you just cancel out the gravity of a heavy object?" They asked. "Doesn't make it any less clunky or hard to maneuver with." "Fair enough." They exited the room, pushing a cart covered in various gadgets. Jetpacks, hover boots, grappling hook launchers, mechanical wings, and some kind of extending boots were strewn across the top, each one unpainted and bare-looking. "Alrighty, so you want something that'll get you moving quickly." May lifted up a pair of boots. "Try these electric-powered coil boots based off the tech used by the villain 𝐴𝐻𝐸. I dunno, I think 𝐲𝐸 might be annoyed if I copy her." 𝐴𝐻𝐸 mused. "𝐲𝐸? Oh, the frog girl, right?" May asked after a moment of thought. "Yeah, wait, you know her?" 𝐴𝐻𝐸 asked, surprised that the girl actually remembered someone's name well. "No, but I helped design her wetsuit's heating system, and Doria says I should try to remember the name of my clients." They explained. "Don't want to offend them by accident, you know." Midoriya gives great advice, huh?" 𝐴𝐻𝐸 said with a small smile. "You like him, don't you?" May said with a knowing smile, which only grew larger when the Gravity Girl's expression turned to one of shock. What? No, I mean he's a good friend, but we're trying to be heroes and he's busy with all this other stuff and that's a load of bunk." 𝐴𝐻𝐸 blinked. 𝐶USE? She asked. "It's a load of bunk," May repeated with just as much bluntness. "You like him, he likes you, so just date. Plenty of heroes date." The water hose heroes were a husband-wife duo. The Fox Witch is happily married to her wives, Sunspot and Spider Sakura. Heck, Midnight's got a romantic partner. "Really? I thought that was just a rumor," 𝐴𝐻𝐸 admitted. No, I overheard Hijima-sensei talking to Cementos about them. I'm pretty sure it's the hazard hero, Toxamax. You know, the one that came out as non-binary last year. I think they're keeping it subtle to avoid a Gwen Stacy scenario. Oh yeah, Ochako admitted. The death of the original Gwen Stacy was used as an example of the dangerous of being open with one's identity. Many Japanese heroes like Endeavor and Uwabami didn't usually follow this philosophy of heroing, but the incident was still taught to heroes in training both as a form of OPSEC and to warn about the unforeseen effects that being a hero could have on one's life. The fact that Gwen was brought back to life via a clone who became the Ghost Spider did nothing to diminish the impact her death had on Peter Parker, and most people didn't come back to life. But they're all professional heroes, and we're still learning. And I'll say again, it's a load of bunk. May insisted. Look, I'm not saying you need to throw him onto your bed and make babies on the first night. Ochako choked at the words, mainly due to the fantasy that followed. Just do something small. May continued without stopping. Invite him to get a boba tea or something. Or coffee. Doria runs off the stuff. Can we just get back to the support items? Ochako practically begged, her face still red from the fantasy. Fine, May said with an eye roll. Honestly, why is this such a big deal? David, I don't know if this is a good idea. Sam, All Might's school was attacked under his watch. If we could recreate the Captain America serum, we'd be able to jumpstart a new generation of even greater heroes. Imagine All Might with the super soldier serum within him. David looked up from his computer, bags under his eyes that did nothing to hide his determined gaze. I know that, but trying to create it with the globulin green serum as its base. If we're not careful, we could end up with a monster. Sam sighed, rubbing his temples. Don't you think that we should focus on developing the quirk enhancer instead? It's far more stabilized and we know that it works. No, this is the smarter option. The quirk enhancer could be stolen from All Might and then any villain could instantly rise to the top of the SHI wanted lists. Besides, it's not just the globulin green. I'm using data from the Captain America blood sample that Stark Industries provided us to fix any potential flaws. David insisted. Sam barely bit back a growl. This was definitely going to put a damper on his scheme. The super soldier serum would certainly be valuable to the right people, but if it wasn't made properly. Testing on rodents was all well and good, but his clients needed to know for certain, lest they come after him with an assassin. Oh, but how could he get that bleeding heart David to agree to human test subjects? He'd never risk creating something so dangerous as another Green Goblin. Unless, yes, speaking up, Sam sighed in apparent resignation. Well, if we're going to do this, we should at least find a volunteer for human trials. After all, we don't want All Might to become the next Green Goblin. David stopped as the mental image appeared in his head, a cackling, muscular All Might with horns and skin the color of bile tossing bombs from a glider. Shaking his head in disgust, he turned to his lifelong friend. You're right, we can't risk something that dangerous. But who'll volunteer? I have a friend, a former field medic and a good man. He works with Parker Industries, Sam suggested. He was recently in an accident that made his healing quirk unusable beyond minor injuries, but the serum could help him recover. How soon can he arrive? David asked. The expo, I think. Well, at least we'll be able to show off something new and amazing to the investors. David muttered. Kaminari looked around in awe. A few minutes ago, he had been talking with Quentin Beck about various films he enjoyed watching, and the AI offered to show him something awesome. He had been hoping it was something cool like a gaming room. This was even better. Beneath the workshop, the training area, and a garage was a massive museum dedicated to the props, costumes, and set pieces of cinema, all secured behind airtight bulletproof glass. No way, is that the original Gajira suit? Yes, well, most of it. It was falling apart when I obtained it, but I managed to restore it to the point that it's nearly identical to the original article, 𝐬𝐵 admitted. The suit in question was posed in the middle of smashing up a model of 1950s Tokyo while puppets of Mothra and King Ghidorah fought above it. I have an entire collection of suits from various monster films, as well as Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, and Ultraman. Really, I figured you'd be more about the American stuff, Kaminari admitted. Cinema is an art form that goes beyond nationality, though admittedly most of this stuff is from American movies, 𝐬𝐵 explained, leading him through a section meant for action, adventure films. Kaminari marveled at the original Terminator endoskeleton prop, Rambo's M60 machine gun, Indiana Jones costume with the treasures of each film and the matching sets, Francisco Scaramanga's golden gun, 1989 seconds Batman batsuit, a rainbow of lightsabers from every Star Wars movie with Luke's original lightsaber prop at the forefront, chunks of fake kryptonite from the Christopher Reeves Superman films, and so much more. And now for what's admittedly my personal favorite section. The horror films. 𝐬𝐵 led the electric hero in training into the room, gesturing with a robotic claw to each prop. The original Freddy Krueger glove, the chainsaw from the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Necronomicon X Morty's props from the original Evil Dead trilogy, and lastly, the crown jewels of my collection. Midoriya floated over to a wall, where sealed behind a 3-inch thick pane of bulletproof glass was a film reel, a VHS tape, and a DVD. London After Midnight. The original 1927 silent film reel beside 2 copies I made when it was transferred over to other mediums by yours truly for watching. A film starring 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐨𝐭 𝐖𝐡𝐚. The film was originally lost to history due to a fire at MGM's studio vault in 1965. It is the holy grail of horror film collections, though admittedly the film doesn't hold up to the likes of nosferatu or Dracula. Wait, if it was lost to history, how'd you get a hold it? Kaminari asked the AI. Oh, well, Dr. Doom was doing this plot where he traveled back in time to 1871 to investigate this time anomaly so he could exploit it. So he hired Scorpion, Sandman, the Black Knight, and I to act as muscle and keep away any local heroes like the Phantom Rider. Instead of cash like the other guys, I asked Dr. Doom to pay for my services by taking me to when these artifacts were about to go missing or destroyed, and I saved them. Midoriya said this with the air one said when describing how he fixed a toaster. Wait, you stole these? Kaminari looked at Midoriya, who just rolled his eyes. No, I saved these priceless treasures from being lost to history by people who couldn't see their true value. Midoriya insisted. I mean, did you know what Universal Studios was going to do to the pipe organ from the Phantom of the Opera silent film starring 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐴? They were going to demolish it, the oldest surviving set piece in the world, for a fucking Harry Potter ride of all things. Well, then, why not set up your own museum? One you owned and ran, so that other people could see it? The Electric Boy suggested, and risk the blood-sucking lawyers of the film industry coming to reclaim these items in spite of the statute of limitations having long since been passed. Midoriya sneered. No thank you, I'd rather keep it down here, where it can be appreciated by those who truly love cinema, like us. Then why isn't it on the first floor with the rest of your gear and props? Midoriya took a long moment to think before answering. To keep thieves from saying it. I have plenty of Mysterio suits, I don't care if they're taken, but these are too valuable to be seen by anyone I cannot trust. You just wanted Mysterio to be the first thing people saw? Ha, that's slander. You insult me, Kaminari. Crash. Shuichi Iguchi fell against the trash cans, but he didn't get up, despite what the men in the alleyway were telling him. Come on, freak. At least make this interesting for us. Shuichi knew it had been a bad idea to step out. He should have just stayed home. But he was running low on food, and he was sick of ordering meal deliveries. He thought that he could just go outside, grab some cheap sushi and head back home, maybe play the new League of Legends 3 expansion pack. But no, instead, he tried to cut through an alleyway, and ran into a small group of thugs, all in plague masks, that he was sure belonged to the Creature Rejection clan, given how they referred to him in such derogatory terms. The men had quickly cornered him, attacking with lead pipes, quirks, and a katana sword he was certain one guy had summoned from thin air. His scales blocked the worst of the assault. But if he didn't stitch up his side soon, he'd be in serious trouble. One advantage of being a lizard, he supposed, quicker healing. I bet this crocodile's with that Mysterio kid. Latin and villains to hurt some kids. One man sneered. The apparent leader of the gang. Please, I just want to go home. Shuichi mumbled. He knew it was hopeless. People like this had always plagued him, harassed him, spat on him. It was the curse of being a heteromorph. But some small part of him still wanted things to be different, to make a change. Listen here, freak. You're a monster, you'll always be a monster. And us, we kill monsters. The speaker approached, his arm swelling up, when something silvery embedded itself in the arm. He screamed in pain, staring at the projectiles, each one silver and resembling crescent moons. How disgusting. A British accented voice growled out above. The 5 thugs and 1 heteromorph looked up to the rooftops, where standing on the ledge like a gargoyle was a figure, wearing bandages over a black skin-tight suit, a white hooded cloak, and a half-black half-white mask. Emblazoned upon the chest was a crescent moon made of a silvery metal. Nearly 200 years and people still find stupid reasons to hate each other. Then suddenly, the vigilante started speaking in different voices. Say guys make me sick. Divided by I say we should kill him. Divided by Spectre, no. We're the good guys. Divided by yeah, we're real Boy Scouts. The man argued with himself, swapping between a hoarse Brooklyn accent, a gruff Chicago accented voice, and 2 different Japanese accented voices, one sounding like an upbeat city local, the other more snide and rural. The vigilante, having apparently settled the argument within himself, leaped down, landing on a man in a way that felt a lot like a certain caped crusader from some American comics. Oh shit, it's that insane vigilante, Katana yelled, swinging at the man, who blocked with a pair of moon blades that appeared from nowhere. The name's Moon Knight. The vigilante shot back in the Chicago accent, before he spoke in the voice with the British accent. Wait, Spectre, I thought we were Mr. Knight. No, Grant-sama, we're Moon Ninja. The vigilante repeated in the rural voice. But twice, I wanna be Dr. Moon. The city voice muttered. The man, Moon Knight, continued to hold an argument with himself, arguing in the voices of at least 5 people, all the while dodging and flipping around the plague-masked villains. Look, Jin, can we talk about this later? We're in the middle of something. The Chicago voice, Spectre, shot back while grabbing a pipe and breaking the attacker's kneecap. If anyone else thought the clearly unwell man's conversation was weird, they said nothing, instead focusing their efforts on beating him down. Not that it was going well. Quite the opposite, in fact. After only 2 minutes, Moon Knight was standing over each man as they struggled to get back up. Guys, we can take him if we go all at once. The leader shouted to the others as they got back up. Oh, you think so? Moon Knight shouted in the voice of Grant. He threw out his arm, and from it a thick, mud-like substance appeared flowing out of his hand, then reformed into another man, wearing an identical mask to the Moon Knight. But this one was in a white suit with a necktie, secured with a crescent moon tie clip. Mr. Knight, here to fight. The newcomer spoke in Grant's tone of voice as he drew out a pair of curved daggers with moon symbols on the hilts. With another slurry of the mud-like substance, the man's quirk in action, Xiachi realized. A third man appeared, wearing the same mask as the other 2, but this one was dressed like a ninja with moon-shaped sickles connected to the bandages wrapped around his arms. How long have you been workshopping that? The third person, who Shiguchi assumed was Twice, or Moon Ninja, muttered. What the shit is going on? Katana yelled, swinging at the ninja. I think his quirk lets him summon his other personalities as people or someone guy, with metal spikes emerging from his knuckles, was knocked out with a fist to the nose before he could finish speaking. The 3 men moved fluidly. Moon Ninja was the swiftest, though Moon Knight, or Spectre, seemed to be the most tactical, taking down each person with a level of precision Shuichi has only seen in videos of soldiers and master martial artists. With only 3 moves he disarmed Katana of his weapon, sending it clattering near Shuichi, who could only watch the scene before him, still laying in the garbage where he was pushed into. It had never happened before. Someone was stepping in to save him. And they weren't even a heteromorph or a mutant like he was. Ew, diseased freaks. Glancing over, the heteromorph saw the lead thug stumbling to get up, supporting himself on a nearby trash can. He swept his right hand down, a gun barrel emerging from a thin slit over the end of his wrist. I won't go down easy, the man growled, taking aim with the gun barrel arm, a light appearing within the barrel. Shuichi didn't know why he did it. He didn't know the vigilante. He had never attacked anyone in his life. He had never even told anyone off before, even though there were days where he just really wanted to lash out at the people who hurt him. But he was raised differently. His dads never approved of violence to answer their problems. They thought that words and ideology were more important, that you should rely on them and stick to enforcing them. Violence was the absolute last resort, and it should be left to the pro-heroes. But then, his adopted dads never saw their savior about to be shot in the back. So Shuichi grabbed the fallen sword and, remembering the stances from his favorite video games, swung the blade upwards. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the best of shape, nor were video games a good substitute for actual training, so his attack did little more than lightly cut into the thug leader's arm. Thankfully, it was enough. The upward swing knocked the blast away from Moon Knight, instead hitting Mr. Knight in the chest, who bled that mud which composed him, and promptly dissolved into a pile of that same substance. Quick as a flash, Moon Knight spun around and leaped onto the man, pushing him against the wall while grabbing his forehead with both hands. Glaring deep into his eyes, he then spoke, but it was in the voice of someone new. In the name of justice, I, 𝐀𝐦, God of the Moon, confiscate your gift. A white glow surrounded the thug's head, flowing up the vigilante's arms and into his eyes, which glowed like stars. Shuichi's jaw dropped, for the man's gun barrel turned to dust. The hole had emerged from sealing up. Moon Knight got up, and much to the shock of Shuichi and the thug, his bandages unraveled on their own, and a near-identical gun barrel emerged from a slit on the back of his wrist. You stole my quirk. The thug's bravado was gone, replaced with a 1,000-yard stare and a voice that barely broke above a whisper. It's what you get for trying to hurt someone for being different. Well, now you are different. Moon Knight, Spectre, dismissed, before knocking him out with a blast from the man's former quirk. Phew, that was close. Moon Knight spoke as Jin, turning to Shuichi. I mean, we're fine if we're in one of our doubles and it breaks apart, but if our main body gets hurt, I don't even want to know. Jin, shut up. Moon Ninja hissed in anger, but promptly dissolved into mud. Just ignore them, these guys are killjoys. Moon Knight as Jin muttered. But either way, thank you for the help. No problem, Shuichi said quietly. Unsure of what else to say at the man staring at him, he tried to think of an icebreaker. So, you're Moon Knight. Actually, I'm Dr. Moon. Jin explained, his outfit morphing into a doctor's coat with a badge reading Dr. Moon and a hospital logo of a green moon within a red cross secured to the lapel. But there's also Moon Knight, Mr. Knight, Moon Ninja, and, what name did Jake choose again? Detective Knight. The Brooklyn voice, Jake, muttered. And stop telling him our secrets. We don't know if this guy can be trusted. Whoa, I'm not going to say anything. Shuichi yelped, backing away in fear. I just want to get home and play video games. I won't tell anyone. Just don't hurt me or steal my quirk. Great, now he's scared of us. Steven, divided by Mr. Knight, muttered in annoyance. He looked ready to begin another argument with himself. But a voice, a young girl's, cut through the air. Glancing down the alleyway, the heteromorphin vigilante saw the speaker was a little girl with a single horn, clutching the crushed remains of Shuichi's dinner, her eyes wide with cautious hope. You can remove my curse. Damn it, Shuichi had just wanted some sushi. The 5 UA High students left Wondrous Might and Magic, unaware of the events that had happened only a few streets away. The day had been filled with fun, growing closer together, training, and hopefully, tools that will help with the challenges that were ahead of them all.